Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to episode 44 of the Yorkshire Gamers Read Big Wargames podcast. And we've got our feet firmly planted in Yorkshire today. We're going to be talking to Pete Berry from Baccus Miniatures, a 6mm manufacturer. I hear you have a sharp intake of breath. But me and Pete's outlook on wargaming in general is not that different, and I'm sure you'll enjoy our conversation. And we cover lots of topics like his ECW rules. Forlorn Hope are a big favourite here at Yorkshire Gamer, and obviously Baccus Miniatures and 6mm and scale and wargaming in general. Lots and lots to get your teeth into in the coming few hours. The length of the episodes are getting slightly longer now. I used to try and keep them at 2 hours, but I've said in the past, people like yourself probably sat there doing a bit of painting, or you're on a long journey, and half an hour just isn't going to cut it. So I've just let the conversations go, and if we've got things to talk about and we're having a good time as a host and guest, then I'm just letting the conversations run, and hopefully you're enjoying that as well. It's been a nice upturn in guests since the new year, and some of the more popular episodes now are tipping over 3,000 downloads on both formats that it's released. So if you're new to the podcast, welcome. You are very welcome indeed to be part of the Yorkshire Gamer community. And there's lots of podcasts backlash of stuff that I've done for you to go and have a listen to. Obviously, 43 other episodes apart from this one. So dip back into the catalogue. They're all there, all available, all for free. So I hope you enjoy those. So just before we go to the episode itself, Pete, bless him, had a bit of a cold. So if you found the meat stuffed up, Malcolm, then it's because he was. I've managed to cut all the coughs and splutters out. But latest news from the hospital is that he is safe and well. And we talk about the Joy of Six show in Sheffield on the 2nd of July, and which is going to be just over a week away from when this is released. And if you're up in the area, pop along and say hello and have a look at what all this 6mm small scale stuff is all about. I'm sure you'll enjoy it. It's been hailed as a very friendly show. Well, we'll see how that goes when I go next year, but it'll be great to increase the profile of that show and get more people. Even if you're just curious about 6mm and what it can do, and you can certainly have some massive games with it, with some massive size units, which is what we're all about here. So sit back, get yourself a cup of tea as usual, and enjoy the conversation with Pete. Without further ado, here's the interview. Well, hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome once again to the interview section of episode 44 of the Yorkshire Gamer podcast. And after a trip abroad to the USA and another trip abroad to the Isle of Wight, I'm back firmly in God's Own County, and we're going to have a classic debate today about God's Own Scale. My guest was a regular on my good friend Sean Clark's podcast, and I had a fantastic intro set up about Yorkshire Gamer being a home for displaced podcast guests. But Sean's back on the air, so he's completely destroyed that. Thanks, Sean. Today's guest is best known for being the driving force behind one of the leading 6mm wargaming manufacturers, and I'm sure we're going to have a chat about the company and the upcoming Joy of Six show that's due in a couple of weeks' time. And he even had a start in this podcast, a hand in the start of this podcast. More of that later, I'm sure. But there will be plenty of time to see what makes my guest tick. We will be following the file leader to go once upon a time in the West Indies. Or it could just be a forlorn hope. So, what the bloody hell's a 6mm evangelist doing on a 28mm podcast, I hear you say? Well, I think our viewpoints might not be that far apart. So, let's find out, shall we? Welcome to my latest guest on the Yorkshire Gamer podcast, and give a real big welcome to Pete Berry. Hello, Pete.
Oh, hey up, Ken. What an introduction. I can't follow that at all. Marvellous.
Excellent. Well, it's lovely to have you on the show, mate. We've had a chat a few times at shows, haven't we? And I'm sure there'll be many things we'll cover today that people will be going, "What are these two going to talk about?"
Ooh.
You've done podcasts before, haven't you, mate? You've done Sean's, and I think you did Henry's as well, didn't you?
Oh, I've done more podcasts to the point whereby Sean Clark just called me a media whore. Uh, I just did one the other night for the hobby support group.
All right, yeah,
That's my third time with them. I'm just passed around.
yeah. You'll talk about anything, is what you're saying.
Absolutely, yeah. Try shutting me up.
Yeah, well, that's what we like. That's what we like with podcast guests, because sometimes people will go on and say, "Oh, I can't stop talking," and for a podcast guest, that's exactly what we want. So talk away, talk away. That's what we want to hear. But before we get going, before you get too comfortable, we have a thing called the 4 minute challenge. And you've got your little timer at your end, which is great. So we just like people to try and summarize their war games history as a bit of an icebreaker in 4 minutes, get you warmed up and everything. So are you ready to go, mate?
Yeah, can I say before I do start this,
Yeah.
I had actually planned to sum all this up in a haiku.
I-
14 syllables of excellence and clarity. To be honest, I couldn't be asked in the end, so
yeah.
you stuck with me rambling for 4 minutes.
That sounds about right. Well, you crack on, mate, while I switch the plug on my laptop, or else we'll disappear.
Right. I started as pretty much every wargamer of my generation did start, and that's back with Airfix figures, uh, probably my early years rolling marbles at them and painting them gloss black, or doing whatever you do when you're 7, 8, or 9, and you paint with all these little men. And somehow I didn't quite grow out of that. By my mid-teens, I was a regular member at Halifax Wargames Club,
Mm.
oh, and that's sort of like my formative years in the hobby. I played a lot of Ancients, the old WRG fourth edition rules, which probably
Wow.
dates me, yeah, decrepit or what. And yeah, I quite enjoyed that. And it's there that I met a group of guys with whom I actually went off a completely different wargaming direction. And that's the oft-mentioned Ian Beck,
Mm.
uh, Mike Bussey, and John Spencer. And the four of us met at Ian's house, and we did different sort of gaming. Ian was a force of nature, just doing different sort of projects. We all love movies. We love spaghetti westerns, and we did western gunfights with 54mm figures here. Big
Wow.
figures.
Yeah.
Uh, or we uh, did we did medieval. We used 15mm. We were very scale, whatever. We wouldn't use anything. And one of our games, you need to prove of this, was we did the Battle of Poitiers at 1-5 in 15mm, and
Nice.
this sort of game wasn't done in those days.
Yeah.
I was talking here sort of like the mid 70s, so you didn't see this sort of thing. Yeah, great hordes and hordes and hordes of averagely painted figures, but on the battlefield it looked
Yeah.
immense. So we moved on from that. We went to shows, and we took our little Western gunfight town around. People joined in, and we did the Pony Wars games, which I'm sure a lot of your listeners will have heard of.
Mm.
And I recently re-released last year, which has gone very well. So that was my early years, and good God, I've got to talk quicker. Uh, I went to university. At university, I went a slightly different direction. I discovered that I was absolutely fascinated by the English Civil War, by the 18th century, and I discovered a completely unknown war games period called the Great Northern War.
Mm.
Uh, and I have been obsessed by that ever since. I mean, I was translating obscure papers from Swedish into English with my little English Swedish uh, uh, dictionary, or as my friend called it, he says it's like German with bubbles. And so I went off with that, and then I thought, well, it's time for me to write a war game rule set or two. So I started doing that. But all of this time, not a single figure below 15mm, not one. Not even
Yeah.
a of it. I would have thought you'd been mad if you'd have mentioned things like that. And I was a very, very firm 28mm or 25mm, which morphed into 28mm collector. Uh, I, at one stage, worked for Games Workshop. Again, this is the pre-Evil Empire days. I was in the retail section there, and I was writing at the beginning of the formation of Wargames Foundry, and I had a large collection of Wargames Foundry English War figures. And then I started reenacting in the Civil War,
Yeah.
which I think we might cover later.
Yeah.
And I decided to write even more rules. I mean, I ended up writing 4 sets of English Civil War rules. Why? Heaven knows. And all that was progressing very, very nicely. And then along came a little period of unemployment and the rise of this idea about doing 6 mil figures.
Mm.
Absolute insanity, you would have thought. Well, so did I.
Yeah.
But circumstances changed. And I'll tell you all about that later because I am now finished.
Ooh, 4 minutes. Hey, it's harder than you think, isn't it?
Good God, no. The one thing I can do is spout rubbish.
Yeah. No, I mean, getting it all in 4 minutes, it goes quicker than you think.
Yeah,
Some people,
it does actually.
some people have been really good and like practiced and everything. They get it
Ah,
absolutely spot on, and then other people, they've not even got to primary school by the time we get to 4 minutes. So it's a good laugh. It's a good laugh, I have to say. Good icebreaker.
I should have stuck to the haiku.
Yeah, exactly. So Halifax, mate, is that hometown?
It is, yes.
Yeah,
Born and bred there.
born and bred. And have you stayed in Yorkshire all your life? Because I think he's Sheffield way now, Rotherham, Sheffield way.
Yeah, pretty much so. Sheffield. I went to university at Sheffield.
Yeah.
Uh, all my jobs seemed to be in Sheffield,
Mm.
apart from one sojourn where I had a job where I was working up in Wakefield, which again isn't a million miles away. I commuted there for a while. But yes, yeah, I've stayed a Yorkshireman. Thank God.
And I think the Halifax club's still going, isn't it?
It is, yes. I bump into the guys fairly regularly because obviously I do the show circuit, and yeah, they turn up.
Yeah,
And
I see them at Fiasco, I'm sure, and Recon in Pudsey. They're normally around doing something. So big shout to the Halifax Wargames Club. Well,
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Long may they continue.
and did you get involved in any clubs in Sheffield?
I when I was at university, I was at the obviously University of Wargames Society, and that had an open door policy for allowing people who weren't strictly speaking university graduates and undergraduates to join in
Mm.
to come along. So I carried on wargaming really with them after I left university and carried on doing that for a long time. Then that sort of went into abeyance. I discovered reenactment. I also got married and I got 2 small children. And if anybody, well, I'm sure many of you people listening to this would realise something's got to give.
Yeah.
And at that stage, really, I became much more of a collector than a wargamer. But I was still getting this stuff, and I was still putting games on because my reenactment group, we went to triples every year. And as well as having a little stand where people dressed up and showed off the arms and the armour and things like that, we always tried to put on a game that people could join in. So the biggest of war skirmishers, or we did a Treasure Island game once. And I think the the daftest one we ever did was something called Breakfast in the Bastion.
Well, I think I remember that one. I think I remember that one.
It was basically taken from the Three
Yeah.
Musketeers film.
Yeah.
It was a section of curtain wall from the city, from the town. A bridge that came out of that and into a very large bastion.
Mm.
And in there were 5 54 mil figures. These were the 4 Musketeers and the servant. And then across that bridge would come loads and loads of 28 mil Huguenots all trying to attack.
Yeah.
But it was like Space Invaders. These could be mown down so easily it was untrue. And part of the process was the Musketeers could shoot muskets. And what we did was we gave 4 cards in an envelope which had a line from the loading drill for a musket, because there's 24, 26, and a number on the back. And they were given to the servant because he was the one who could load the muskets. If you've seen the film,
Yeah.
that's basically what they do.
Exactly. Yeah.
He's got to look at the cards the wrong way around, just run the loading sequence instructions, put them in the right order,
Yeah.
put them back in the envelope, and give them to Musketeer. If the Musketeer turns it over, goes 1, 2, 3, 4, you go bang, and you've killed some Huguenots.
Ah, excellent.
If it doesn't, it gets thrown back at him until to get it right next time. You have to remember there's 4 guys doing this because we did it in real time. There were no goes. It started, and it was just mayhem for 10 to 15 minutes as guys were just moving all these 28 mil figures forward, getting them blasted, and then taking them back in the queue to keep going. Musketeers desperately trying to mow them down before they get too close. And on top of that, because it was breakfast, we made all the Musketeers, they had to eat 4 dry cream crackers. and drink half a bottle of flat Coke all the time that we're going through
Oh,
this.
brilliant.
And yeah, I think after that, I couldn't go any further. I think that was the last game of fun. That was brilliant.
I do remember that game at triples. That's absolute quality. Do you get a chance to game much now? I mean, obviously your life is wargaming with Baccus Miniatures. Is it? Do you still try and keep your hand in?
I'd like to. I tried to a few years ago, but I found I was going down to the local club, and quite naturally people would ask me what's coming up, what I'm doing next, about shows
Mm,
coming up, things like that. And I found that I went, even though I was trying to play, with a Games Workshop Orc game, I couldn't get away.
yeah.
Became a bit of a husband's holiday. Uh, so in the end, I stopped doing that. I played games at home with my eldest son,
Oh, brilliant.
who was into games. He was into Games Workshop, so in a big way. Uh, uh, and I really haven't picked up on the War Games Club since then. But again, my youngest son, Ben, he's coming through, and he's showing a lot of interest
Oh, good.
in. Well, I can say that I take him along to a war game show to help. He gets an official company T-shirt, and about 10 past 8, he says, "Can I go look for a game, Dad?"
Yeah.
I won't see him again till lunchtime when he wants feeding, and then he'll disappear until about 3:30. Okay, fair enough. So he likes playing games. So I think that one's going to move forward quite
Oh,
well.
that's fantastic! It's great to. My lad does a bit of gaming as well, so and it's great to have that relationship with your kids to bring them into gaming as well. So that's great to hear. You mentioned a couple of periods there. ECW, big favourite of yours.
Oh yes,
Do you have a general love of history? Is it something that's come from a young age?
yeah. I mean, I think it probably started watching all the Hollywood B movies back in my formative years. I've always loved walking around castles and the story. I read juvenile historical fiction, Rosemary Sutcliffe, Henry
Mm,
Treece, all this sort of thing. It just builds up inside you. Uh, and I went to university. I did history as a
yeah.
degree at university. And I've just kept up with it ever since. It to me, it's an amazing subject with so many different facets, and there's always something new to find.
Exactly. I find I got into the Italian Risorgimento last year and never really
Yeah.
knew about it, but never read about it. So like you say, there's always something new and interesting that you can go and start to learn, even at young, ripe age that we are.
Well, yeah. I mean, I was listening to the podcast you did where you were interviewing I forget his name, the expert on
Oh,
the
Nick
Risorgimento.
Schofield, yeah,
Yeah, that's absolutely
yeah,
fascinating. Really, it really was. Because I knew a little bit about the Risorgimento. It was a module that I did at university sort of 40 years ago. And it all came flooding back. But very
yeah.
interesting, fascinating
Yeah,
period.
extremely, and so much. Anything Italian has so much intrigue and backstabbing and side swapping. And it's
Oh, I think we're getting dangerously close to stereotyping here.
well, it's sometimes stereotypes are true.
Okay, can't argue with that.
So if you read Machiavelli, it's all there.
Oh,
It's all there.
it's a brilliant, brilliant. I've got 3 copies of The Prince. In fact, some of my old reenactment friends will probably have words to say about
Yeah.
that. They're amazing reads. Absolute manual of how to become a Renaissance prince and be a successor to. Um, it is all there. If you want to win a game of diplomacy, read the
Yeah,
Prince.
I definitely don't think Machiavelli would have played cricket. He probably would have played croquet because that's a bit of a sneaky game, but definitely not cricket.
Any game he played, he would have known the rules better than me.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So we'll talk a bit about the English Civil War in the next section when we're going to touch on reenactment as one of your hobbies. But you mentioned the Great Northern War, and that's something that's fascinated me. And I can't remember the name of the company. Under the Bed Enterprises used to sell them. I can't remember the 28s or what scale they are. They did a big range of figures for it, and that was the kind of first time that I went, "What's this?" So
Is it Warfare? Warfare do a massive range of Great North Warfare.
yeah. So where did your interest come in? The right, slight. Well, not for us, but for the general public, the Great Northern War is rather obscure.
Well, it is. It was peaked when I was doing my A levels at school. In the fact that we covered European history from in 1618 through to the end of the Great North
Yeah.
War, effectively the start of the 30 Years' War through to the end of the Great Northern War. And Sweden obviously is a major part of that. And to somebody new to it, you just go Sweden, and you start to scratch your
Yeah.
heads. Sort of, nice from the Scandinavians. That they do a very, very good line of soft furniture and soft flat pack. And you suddenly realise that these guys terrorised the Baltic and most of Northern Europe for the best part of 80 years. And again, you think about the more you look at it, the more I was fascinated by how such a small country with so few resources could punch so far above its
Mm.
weight and maintain that for so long. It was quite amazing. And then you look at the history, and there's just amazing characters, culminating in, of course, of Charles XII, who volumes written about the guy, extraordinary guy, and that's then linked with Peter the Great, who was equally a massive, massive figure, uh, single-handedly, effectively brought Russia forward 3 centuries, which really only brought it into the 16th
Mm.
century from where they were. It, it is an amazingly interesting period. Now, this is all going on at the same time as the Mulberry Wars, the Spanish Succession, which most people are more familiar with, and I certainly was. That's something I knew about. And I started comparing the two, and the Great North War made the Spanish Succession look like a fairly weak, milky thing as opposed to a really good pint of Yorkshire
Mm.
bitter. It was, yeah, they fought the big battles. There were some conclusions. Marlborough walked around, walking on water, and everybody. There were some big baddies and some goodies, but it fizzled out. It wasn't particularly decisive.
Mm.
It was a war which went nowhere, and in terms of outcome, it went nowhere. Great North War. Wow. The destruction of one great empire, the rise of another, the beginnings of the ascendancy of Prussia. This is big stuff. This is big history, and it's happening there, and it's much, much more interesting and much more
Mm.
significant. So, yeah, that is where my interest started.
And is it mostly horse and musket that you're interested in? Because we've kind of ECW into the Great Northern War. We're not a massive time span. Um, you mentioned ancients earlier on in your early part of your wargaming.
Yeah.
Have you ever gone for? Are you into modern period, or just horse and musket where it really ends for you?
I've got to say, I'm probably one of these classic wargamers who likes the horse and musket
Yeah,
period, and I would prefer the pre-Napoleonic to the Napoleonic and post. Having said that, I will play Napoleonic gaming because the uniforms are pretty. Let's face it,
yeah.
and some of the armies are really nice. But yeah, on the whole, that period where you're coming out at the beginning of it
Mm.
from a quasi medieval period, and you're beginning to see the birth of modern nations and modern nationality, patriotism, and all the rest that the French Revolution unleashed upon the world. It's amazingly dynamic, interesting period of history to me, and also in terms of wargaming, there's a lot to earn from that.
Yeah, and there's lots of different wars and lots of I like the smaller nations and the principalities and all these tiny little things with all these weird and wonderful uniforms who just suddenly turn, they're in existence for maybe 12 years or something like that, and then they get merged into something. There's so much to learn and read about that's different from today, but also bleeds into today's politics and politics the throughout history.
Yeah, well, you can't understand Northern Ireland without understanding the period of William
Yeah.
III. It is, and that resonates in today's politics, and I'm sure you've got similar examples, which I won't know about right across the whole of Middle Europe.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Well, it's lovely to hear. I like somebody who's passionate about history because I am absolutely. I love it. I can't get enough of it. It is the absolute business. So I'm going to drop in and have a chat about rule writing in this particular section because it doesn't really fit in anywhere else that we're going to talk about. And I mentioned with some fairly poor puns during my introduction, uh, some of the rules, some of the rule sets that you've made, and were you one of those people who, when you started wargaming, would always like to tinker around with rules and maybe write your own set very early on in your wargaming?
I was, but again, you did. It's like if you wanted to play a war game, You had to get your FX figures, cut them in half, shove a pin up their arse,
Yeah.
um, melt something with like a match, throw some gloss paint in it, and know you've done a conversion because that's the only way you're going to get the figure you wanted. And it's the same with the rules. If you didn't happen to have the book from the library, because you'd had to send it back because
Yeah.
people at the Featherstone book back, you had to sit down and write your own. And I had that very, very early on. That's the DIY nature of wargaming at that time. So that really never left me. Uh, and then again, I'll come back to this period. It was only a few years, but with the four of us, with Ian there, we wanted to do things that nobody had done
Yeah.
before. And the only way to do it was to write the rules to enable us to do the things. So we've got very much an attitude that if we can't find it, we'll do it. If we don't like the rules that we've got, we will do
Mm.
it. And I then became used to the process of putting a set of rules together with three very bright, knowledgeable guys. It was brilliant at coming up with new mechanisms, but we all had an input into it. We all had a hand. We all uh, helped produce these things. So there were rules that were brought out at that time. Some of you may know them. Obviously, Pony Wars.
Yeah.
There's a gladiatorial combat set called Rudis.
Yes, I remember Rudis. Yeah.
There was an absolutely unplayable set of Western Gunfight rules called Once Upon a Time in the West.
I've seen the cover of that. I've never actually played it, but I do know the ones you mean.
They were the archetypal 1970s rules. Every last thing you can think of, every last detail. Right, moves broken down into a quarter of a second.
Oh
Uh,
wow.
these were the ultimate detail, taking everything into account rules.
Yeah.
And yes, you could play them, but yeah, it was hard work. Uh, they came in 3 volumes, one of which was basically just an entire compendium of period firearms.
Wow.
Their attributes, how it take to load. What? Yeah. There's a difference whether you're firing a rim fire or a centre fire cartridge in. They were they were a work of passion and love,
Yeah.
but sadly unplayable to the
Yeah.
point where we eventually gave up on them when we do shows and wrote a really simple set, almost like Bang You're Dead, to just get the game flowing. So I was used to that process. So when I sort of went solo, because I moved away from Halifax, obviously moved away from my mates there, and I wanted to start playing games, and I wanted to play Bliss of War because I always got interested in that. And there were 2 sets of rules on the market, neither of which particularly struck me as being a good representation of what I was interested in doing.
Yeah.
And also, like many of the rules of the period, they covered an entire gamut. They would go pike and shot, so they'd have to take into account, Swiss and Lanchenecks at one end of it, and the Great North War Swedes and Russians at the other, were completely different. So you can't, to me, just lump a particular bit with a larger set like that. It doesn't work. You have to focus.
Yeah. Yeah.
And again, probably that's his story to be coming out.
Yeah. Well, I'm a massive fan on really tightly packaged rules for a war,
Yes,
rather than the classic two boys at 1500 BC to 1475 AD.
yeah, exactly.
I'm sure something
Yeah.
changed in between them 2 dates.
Well, it might have done, but to a competition war gamer, that's the writ, and they're happy with it. I'm not going to knock that. That's what people like playing.
Yeah.
But that didn't do anything for me. So I started cranking out what became my first set of published rules, which were a set called Forlorn Hope.
Yes. Yes. We are big fans here of Forlorn Hope.
Well, it amazes me that it's still going. I mean, it's 40 odd years old, and
Yeah.
even I admit it's clunky.
Yeah. I think.
Uh,
I think. I mean, I'd like to dwell a little bit on Forlorn Hope because it is a rule set that we here still play. We've
good on you.
we've modified it
Good.
slightly.
Needs it.
But what we found, and I game with a couple of guys, a couple of 3 guys who are ex um, reenactors, and so when a reenactor of a period likes a set of rules for a period, to me, you're on the right track. So, did will there was a lot of stuff in there that was. kind of I can't even say the word. What is it? Innovative. There we go. For its time, and I felt you were breaking. You had that pike and shot ratio, didn't you, for the units, rather
Yes,
than two wings of shot and pike, and you were in a melee, and you were adding up four of these and two of these, and they've got medium armor and they've got heavy armor, and these guys are around the back, but they're not. And so, what was you thinking about with that kind of ratio defining a unit?
well, the way I looked at it was that to me, and I thought that the rules of the period had got it wrong. The
Mm,
fact that they would take a regiment or a battalion, as I would more correctly call it nowadays, uh, as having the pike would be some sort of unit leader, and then
mm,
two subunits of shot who could go swatting all the way across the battlefield and do whatever they want. And it wasn't like that. All that I'd read, everything that I knew about it, would indicate that a battalion, a regiment, fights as a single formation. That there are nuances within that formation as to what the shot are doing, what the pike are doing, uh, and it fights and functions as a whole.
yeah.
You don't never see an account of Sir Fortescue, what's his name's musketeers, deciding that they would be far better if they went over there
Yeah.
and and they were left there for the rest of the battle.
Yeah.
Yes, there are instances of what's called commanded shot, but that's a different thing altogether, and you can cater for that.
Mm,
So yeah, I mean that the idea of then defining it by a ratio, because obviously then we have to find a means of differentiating between units and also deciding some sort of lethality.
yeah.
So the idea of saying, well, if you've got more muskets than pike, you're going to be better at shooting. If you've got more pike than shot, you're probably going to be better at fisticuffs, and that's how that came about.
Mm. It was very as I say innovative at the time, and we it speeded our games up massively because we weren't having that. Right, I've got four units of infantry would suddenly become 12 independent units, four of pike,
Yes,
because you know what wargamers are like. They'll bend every single possible thing to get things to work.
yeah,
So that was something we still enjoy today. And the army lists in the book, I am so anti-army list, it's untrue. But the ones in the book had been quite well researched, as far as I could tell, in that they would give a percentage chance of having a ratio within a time period, within an army, within a location.
yeah.
So, did you do a lot of work to get those as they were?
Yeah, I mean, this is a concept which dates back to my time in Halifax.
Yeah.
Uh, I mean, I hate point systems. Absolutely loathe and despise them. I will take books of rule systems. I will take them into the room. I'll stamp on them. I'll burn them. Ugh, ugh, yeah, no, nasty. Um, what my view has always been, and it's remained so in the rules I've published through Baccus,
Mm,
is that a good general works with what they're given. They don't go around and say, "Well, I'm facing a pretty cavalry-heavy army today, so I'll go heavy on the. Oh, well, we're not going to have those militia because they're going to run when cavalry come."
yeah.
You don't. You got the militia, use them. Yeah, so you use what you're given. So you we came up with the idea of you throw dice, and if the dice were to fall on average every single time, you would get this army,
Yeah.
and it would be a pretty straight historical representation of what was fielded on the day. But dice never
They know.
work like that. And it can leave you with something which is actually superb, or something which is totally unfit for the job you're going to give it. And that's how that came about. I think it's pretty cool myself.
Yeah,
Uh,
we really like it because it makes that bit, and it really gives a period flavour as well. We were talking earlier on about tightly historically defined rules. Well, those army lists that make it even more tightly developed because you get that development from trotters to gallopers in the parliamentary army, and then you get the weakening in strength but increasing in morale level of the royalist infantry. So it gives a flavour for each period, each location as well, doesn't it?
well, it is what the other thing which is important to realise is the Civil War period is in England. It's a war of regions.
Mm,
You've got three distinct theatres, more if needs be, but three major distinct theatres. and then you've got Ireland, and then you've got Scotland, and even within those, there's differences. I mean, I haven't even begun to cover all of those.
Yeah.
And again, army lists, I'm spitting, army lists, and you'll see them, and they'll go Royalist, early parliamentarian, new model army, Scots, or Montrose, and that's it. And it completely misses out the nuances and the differences in these major provincial armies. So we did obviously the two central armies, and again the uh, Oxford Army and Essex's army changed in nature over the between 42 and 45, very much changed. But you've got Hopton's and Waller's armies on the West Country, and again by the time you get past Roundway Down, they're still fighting, but the armies are very very different. Basically, the Cornish have been destroyed effectively fighting force at the Siege of Bristol. So Hopton is using a scratched together royalist army from different contingents, and Wallace basically had to rebuild as well because he lost an army. But you've also got, which is much more interesting to me, and I'm sure you, which is the titanic struggle between the Earl of Newcastle and the Fairfaxes up in God's Own County.
Exactly. Yeah.
Which, so much stuff happens there. You know, incidents like the storming of Wakefield, where Fairfax effectively takes an army which is like 4 times his size, charges a Wakefield city over the barricades with his cavalry, and herds she rounds up Newcastle's foot troops that are there and takes them prisoner with a quarter of the number. It is boys' own
Yeah.
stuff, absolutely brilliant. Again, that is very very different to the big field armies in the centre. So that's got to be shown. That's got to be shown, and that's what I try to do with these
Yeah,
rules.
yeah, and big fans, as I say. And the final thing I just wanted to just quickly mention on that is that we were in that when they came out. We were in that period where you would have a million factors, and you know you do a morale check, a full morale check for absolutely everything. You know, you cross a hedge, oh morale check. Uh, you'd take your first round of fire, oh full morale check. And what you did with that is you still there were still checks, lots of checks, but they were you'd broken it down and it had really small number of factors for each. You know, check to charge would be a dice, and you'd lose one for X number of casualties or whatever. Had that come from your own frustrations as a gamer?
Partly, but I mean, I will lift my hand here. One takes, how can one put it, inspiration from those that have gone before you, and it was a similar mechanism was actually the WRG Black Powder rules, their Black Powder
Yeah,
period rules, which I think were 17 something to 18 something, but they had a series of smaller checks. I thought that's actually quite good, but I don't like the way they're applying it. But I think it'll work under these circumstances with different checks with different factors, obviously.
yeah,
People, I mean, people now just look at those checks and they go, "Well, look at all of this. Like you've got to memorize all of this and do it." I found, I'm sure you'll agree with me. Once you've played the game a couple of times, you're rolling a dice. You're not looking. You're gonna need a 4 there. If you don't throw a 4, I won't even bother checking.
that's very
Yeah,
much how we play now. And you roll the dice, and then we kind of look at each other and go, you better check, or
yeah,
yeah, you're in, or no, we're off. We're off for a cup of tea somewhere else.
yeah.
So when did they first come out? I remember I've got two copies. I've got a little A5 stamped cardboard cover copy,
Bright orange cover.
bright orange cover.
Yeah,
The covers come off, uh, but it's still around. And then I got there was a bit of a posher one, which was
yeah.
kind of A4. So when did the first come
I
out?
I think the first one came out 81, 82,
Wow.
83.
Oh,
Yeah, about that sort of time.
yeah.
Uh, the title, the rules came because I sat down with one of my mates in the society. So I've written these set of rules. Nobody's going to buy them. They don't normally start point systems. What I'm going to call them? And he had a long sip of his beer and he turned and he went, Forlorn Hope, because that's what you've got.
Well, they're still being played. They're still being played in the Yorkshire Gamer game room. So,
Oh, good. I still get questions about them emailed to me.
do you? Wow.
Yeah, I haven't got a clue. I put pen to paper on these 4 decades ago and I haven't
Oh
played them.
wow. Oh, that's fantastic. That's I like. So that's customer service, that mate. Customer service. That's what they call that.
Well, the answer comes back. You know, what do you think?
Yeah. And then File Leader, that was that a little bit later, but a smaller, like company size, was it?
Yeah, yeah. Well, File Leader again came round because how much we talk about the big battles. Yeah, again, if you read anything to period, you realise there's an awful lot of much smaller scale actions going on, where the unit, if you're a wargamer, would be a company
Mm.
or a troop of horse, a company of foot, troop of horse, 50 guys on foot, 25 to 30 guys on horse. And there's lots of these little size actions. You can't play with a big rule, certainly with Forlorn Hope, because you don't have the granularity. It just doesn't work. So I fiddled around with it a bit, and I just came up with this idea of having troops,
Mm.
just troops and companies, make it all dependent on officers. It's very gamey, and there's no historical background to this. But unless you've got an officer commanding you, you can't. There's very limited action you can do. Uh, and then I just had to put a bit of fun into it, because if you've got officers and you can't do anything, what happens to the officers if something goes wrong with them?
Mm.
So there's a mechanism whereby the more the officers are engaged in the action, the nearer to the front, the more involved he is, more be shot at, the more chance of something happening to him. And there's a table at the back. You throw a couple of dice, and it will give you a whole range of possible outcomes of what can have happened to your officer. And some are good, some are not so good, and some are atrocious. There's a fairly clumsy attempt at humour in a few of them.
Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that.
That, to me, they're my favourite set of rules, like what I've ever wrote.
Yeah.
And yeah, again, there's holes in them. They're a bit clunky. I really ought to revise them and do something with them. But one of the very first playtest games we had, a friend of mine took, he had some dragoons, and he took 3 bases of dragoons down this little sunken lane that was lined with musketeers. They shot the hell out of him. He lost all 3 troops, came away wounded. But because he was wounded and came out, his standing, his kudos rose.
Yeah.
He got another 3 troops, went down the same lane, had those completely destroyed the same way, and had exactly the same thing happen. He came out absolutely shining.
Yeah.
His men would follow him to their death, and they did.
Oh,
And I
wow.
thought, at that stage, I'm onto something here.
Yeah. And that's
So,
a lot. A lot of the more modern rules that have come out recently are around that sort of company level skirmish type game, aren't they? You seem to have set a trailblaze there without realizing.
I realised I'd done something different.
Yeah.
No, the point is, for the best part of 30 years, nobody else has followed the trail I blazed. So it may not be that good.
Visionary, I think is what they call it, Pete. Visionary. You'll have that.
But once you create narrative, you could if you play File Leader, you create a narrative for that game. It's a game you can sit down in the pub afterwards and you go, I can see how that all happened, and it's a really, really good game for that. Not to be taken too seriously, and real good fun.
Excellent, excellent. And then you have your polymos system that is for
Right, you've missed one.
Miss World. Go on.
Once Upon a Time,
Once upon a time in the West Indies or the West Country. Which one is it?
with West Country, which is where there's an awful lot of individual skirmishes. So I then wrote the 3rd set of English Civil War rules, and that was for skirmish 1-to-1.
Can you skirmish with a pike?
Not very well.
Yeah, because that's always got me with some of the more modern skirmish things, and I see like a single figure running around with even a half pike, and I think somebody's going to go around your side, mate. You're in trouble there.
Well, half pike or a bill, I think, is what a pikeman would have ended up with in a situation
Yeah.
like that. I mean, I sort of included them in my rules because I was reenacting at the time, and if I did anything else, my pike company would have probably lynched me if I hadn't included them. And I sort of produce a little thing if you want to just get 5 or 6 of them clumping together. They can block an entrance or something like that. And on that sort of scale, that works. But yes, I mean, in reality, a pike is pretty darn useless.
Yeah, it's a bit of a hindrance, really, isn't it?
Yeah. Drop it and brain somebody with your helmet.
Yeah.
Yeah, that you got more chance of doing some damage. So yeah, they were great fun. And in fact, at the point I did take them along. We had a reenactment meeting once, and a group of my mates unknown to me, who we set the rules, got a pair of giant foam dice, and they actually played out a skirmish at 1-to-1 level with real people, throwing this foam dice to see what the action
Oh,
was.
fantastic. That's proper big gaming.
Oh yeah, yeah. None of this tabletop nonsense.
And then finally, the polymorph system that is kind of goes throughout history, I believe. I haven't, I haven't had a go, but is that something you designed? I'm not sure of the background for this.
It is. It was partly out of necessity, partly out of I wanted to revise the English Civil War rules. Uh, I have changed an awful lot of my thinking. More research has come out, and there's some glaring issues with Forlorn Hope historically. So I needed to do something about that. Uh, but I also needed something for Baccus.
Mm,
You see, I wanted to produce pre-packed armies to sell. It's just a very, very good way of selling things. And it started when I was doing Ancients, and I started doing DBA armies. But the buggers kept on producing DBA version 1.1, 1.2, 2.3, and changing the army list every single
yeah,
time. And I couldn't be bothered doing that. American Civil War, I produced a set of rule. I produced army packs for Fire and
mm,
Fury. That went out of print. Okay, never mind. I'm a more suitable set for 6 mil and a really good set of rules. Volume Bayonet packs. That went out of print. So the little itch at the back of my head was going, you've got to do your own, and then the businessman of me goes, vertical integration.
oh, oh, that's nice,
Vertical integration,
nice.
yeah, yeah. So I thought I'll do a set of rules, and just for a change, it won't be a set of rules where somebody's writing for big figures and goes, "Oh, if you've got little ones, do this," because that happens an
Yeah,
awful
it
lot.
does. Yeah,
You get adaptations for small scale figures by people who wouldn't touch them in their lifetime, and so the mishmash. So I worked from that as a ground up, uh, and this is where we came to the conclusion of using the infamous 60 by 30 base,
yeah,
which is either liked or loathed depending where you are in the 6 mil world. Yeah. It's a symbol of welcome uniformity, or
yeah.
the jackboot heel of Baccus oppressing the 6 mil community. Which side of the
Whichever one you want to go for.
but it was a logical size for putting a unit on. And what it enabled me to do was to take, let's say, Battalia, which is on a 60 by 30 base. That's not the unit you move around. It's not like if you're doing it 28 mil, that's your unit. The Battalia is just a subsection of a brigade. So what your actual unit maneuver is 3, 4, 5, 6 of these Battalia. So I sat down, I sketched some ideas. I had a very, very interesting alcohol fuel weekend with my collaborator, David Heading, which and his wife came up with the name for the series because we got the rules, we got the mechanics, then it's just writing it all up. And she's actually was studying for the time for to become a priest in the Church of England.
All right, okay.
She was studying Greek and Latin and Hebrew and
Mm.
all this sort of stuff. So we sat there going, we need something really pretentious to call this series. Something really, really. And she tried to say, Polymos. And we went, what?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. And it's a Greek demon of war.
Ah,
It's also a state of total war. It's not like fighting Greeks, where you're reasonably gentlemanly. It's fighting barbarians, so you have polymos, and that's no holds barred.
wow.
Uh, so that gave us a series name, and then I always saw it as being a series then which gave us a spine right across major periods that I can base my packaging, base my armies on, and also give people who are playing 6 mil something which is theirs.
Yeah.
It isn't just cobbled down or hand me down from somebody playing in bigger things. It's something which is theirs. Now we've worked that I think through about half a dozen different periods. I'm actually beginning to produce some more stuff now after hiatus of many years because it's a system which lends itself to adaptation very nicely. But there's no two sets of the same. If you get the American Civil War set, it doesn't play that like Napoleonic set, even though they share certain points in common. Uh, which means you can pick up the game because you can pick up the basic principles, but the nuances make the games very, very different.
I mean, I was supposed to last year. We were supposed to come down to your place and play the Little Wars TV guys, didn't we?
You were,
Unfortunately,
yeah,
it didn't come off because of Sean wasn't well, bless him. But I think we were going to use the Polymos rules for that, so that would have been an interesting day out. Shame that
yeah.
didn't happen.
I had my table ready and everything. And even I got dark chocolate hobnobs. I'd got
Oh,
everything that was
oh,
needed.
Oh, we'll have to get
Yeah,
them
I
back.
know.
We'll have to get them back again.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Nice guys. Really nice guys.
Brilliant. Well, we have been chatting away for 50 minutes already, which is a good start for an
Wow.
introduction. And towards the end of the first section, I always like to do the Venn diagram of wargaming. And that's where I get people to break down their own personal hobby into wargamer, painter, collector, and historian, and it kind of defines the way that we game and where our interests lie within what is a hobby that covers so many different aspects and so many different hobbies within a hobby. Really, if you think about wargaming and painting and model building and terrain building, there's so many different aspects. So, where do you see yourself in those sections, Pete?
Oh, well, certainly painter,
Yeah,
collector. Yeah, collector. Yep, absolutely. Historian, big time. That
yeah,
that that is okay. Now, wargamer. Wargame's interesting. If you take a look at it, actually, it's a very very small intersection.
mm,
If you take a look at attitudinally, in how I regard myself, it's quite large. I've still got an active interest in writing wargames rules and doing things like that, but and analysing what's happening in the hobby, and it's fascinating, it's enjoyable, but I'm not actually shoving much figures around on the table.
yeah.
So, how you piece that little Venn diagram together, I don't know. Uh,
Well, no, that's not a million miles different from me because I my wargamer subsection is quite small. I will play a smaller number of larger games throughout the year rather than a game every Wednesday, for example. But I remain, as you do, quite engaged with the hobby in other ways. Obviously, with the podcast, it takes quite a lot of time to do and put one out every 3 weeks, for 3 or 4 weeks. So that takes a bit of hobby time up as well. Um, so do you have big collections of figures that you've had for years and years?
well, yeah, they accumulate. You've got to remember, first of all, we've got one of everything painted.
Right.
Now, the Baccus range is quite large. I've got cabinets
Yeah.
full of figures, and I've got storage boxes full of figures. These are just single bases. And then over the years, I do photo shoots, we do games, so we accumulate armies. I mean, I've got 7 years' war armies laid out on the table next door because we do some photography on those massive American Civil War armies from two different games. We did some show games. Uh, we're about to do some of our big base English Civil War units for a 30-year war game we've got planned. So I've accumulated large amounts of metal, and I have still got some 28 English Civil War.
Oh, brilliant.
Yeah, which is my skirmish
Yeah.
from the Once Upon a Time, which I'm going to have to dust off because I really like that game. That's the sort of game I think I can get going with Ben. That's because it's just a fun game.
Yeah. Oh, fantastic, fantastic. Um, do you do much social media at all? I don't think I see you much on there.
Uh, uh, yes and no. The problem about social media is it's a rabbit hole
Yeah,
and it
yeah,
can take up an awful lot of time. So I'm very disciplined. I've got my own Peter Berry social media page, and I do post on that occasionally. I don't I don't take pictures of what I'm eating for breakfast or anything like that. But
yeah.
uh, I won't I won't hang around on this. But during the Brexit period, I was quite hotly engaged in that with a number of people for various reasons. So yeah, I do involve in that, and I have a very focused hobby
Mm,
social media, mostly centered around the 6 mil centric groups. Uh, uh, I don't tweet. I
yeah,
have a Twitter account, but I found tweeting got again a rabbit hole. You're looking, you're responding, and then your day's gone. So,
yeah. Is it a big part of the business? Do like have a social media strategy or anything like that?
well, if the strategy you mean by spamming as many 6 mil sites as you can,
Ah, ah,
yeah. Oh, so that's just spamming.
yeah.
You can edit that one, can't you?
Yes, of course, I can. I'm sure you meant to say concentrated direct marketing was what you were going to say.
Oh, I'll remember that. Have you got a pen?
I'll write it down for you. Don't worry. Don't worry.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much for that, Pete, we're gonna take a short break for the audience, and we'll be back very shortly to have our normal big game chat. Well, we're back for section 2 of the interview, and this is where we always talk about big games. And I'm sure me and Pete are going to agree on everything.
Well, you think after listening to me in this one, there's anybody left?
Oh, there are loads of people left. You'd be amazed. Yeah, I'm amazed at how many people listen to this. Absolutely shocked. It's more than 3, including my mum. So, uh, first question for everyone in this section is: what does a big game mean to you?
Damn good question. And I'm going to say to your horrible answer, which is it varies.
Yeah.
You see, you can have what most people tell is a big game. 24-foot table,
Mm.
2,500 troops aside. That's a big game. I won't argue with it. But also, a big game can be an 8-foot wide table
Mm.
with 3,000-4,000 6 mil figures.
Mm.
That's a big game.
Yeah, yeah.
A big game could be Pony Wars, where you have 15 mil and you can have up to 600 Indians on an 8x6 table. To me, that's a big game
Yeah.
because that's expanse. The biggest game of all, of course, is renactment, where you're playing with one-to-one scale figures.
Yeah.
Now, all of these things to me are a big game. So I think it's a bit of a slippery definition.
Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. I have my definition or my style. My style, I would prefer to call it a big
Yeah,
game. But I've always said, so even since the first episode, that it was scale agnostic. I have seen some absolutely magnificent 6 mil, 10 mil games on huge tables. And that's a big game all day, every day. In
yeah,
fact, I meant to ask you, do you remember at Triples there was a game of, I think it was Marston Moor.
yeah,
What was it, 1-to-1? And I
yeah,
wondered whether you were involved in that.
yeah. They're on my figures.
Ah, excellent. I
It's a,
thought
lo-
it was
it's a,
you.
lo-
I
it's a
thought it
local
was
game.
you.
Steve Thomas, he painted most of them single-handed.
Wow.
And he eventually ended up with 24,000 figures.
Wow.
The, yeah, it's only been out about 3 or 4 times. Triples, it was out, it went down to Salute. We had it at Joy 6 a few years ago. And it is just awesome. I mean, we'll describe it, absolutely massive spectacle. And it's like none of the figures are beautiful, but it doesn't matter because just that sheer mass gives you an idea of how difficult it is to move an army.
Most definitely, it's one of those games that stuck in my mind, and seeing it and thinking, wow, now we're talking, and I've seen people try and do like one battalion in 15 mil at 1-to-1, but
Yeah.
the whole Master Moore at 1-to-1 was rather impressive. I have to say, Um, so, have you been involved in big games yourself in the past?
Yeah, let's talk about big games in more in your style.
Mm,
One of the things I'm going to mention right from the beginning, the big 50 mil medievals that we did, which were massive,
yeah.
both in terms of the size of the table and the number of figures, huge. Uh, when I was at university, the Wargames Club every year put on a massive game, absolutely enormous. First year there was Aspen Essling, and this is at 1 battalion to 1 battalion. A second year we did Austerlitz, and that was huge because it's a sprawling battlefield. We took over a building, the engineering building in Sheffield, and it was fought over 3, 4 rooms.
Oh, now we're talking.
Nobody knew what was happening in other parts of the battlefield. I mean, one room was basically just entirely devoted to storming the Pratzen Heights.
Yeah.
And when you see a grand battery that's 3 foot long, it's an impressive piece. It didn't matter. We were just buying boxes of Airfix Russians, spraying them green,
Yeah.
and sticking bits of green card. This is a 1970s, 1980s. Remember that's pretty good going for then. We're using old Spencer Smith figures. There's French. The hard plastic AWI made great pre 1806 French. That's what the tip
Mm.
for you. And we had millions of those because they were cheap. And we just this absolute massive battle. The Pratchett was stormed on the first day. On the second day, I was seconded and I became Muraf for the day.
Oh,
Just with cavalry everywhere.
oh, that's a
Vast amounts of cavalry.
boyhood
Just
boyhood
forward.
dream.
Yeah, lose a regiment, throw another one forward. I can take it.
Oh,
Oh,
fantastic.
that was awesome. And then we did we switched period. We did Dettingen with a nice little trichome period one, and that was just a very 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 long table. The time British Army walks up the table and gets shot at and enfiladed by cannon either side, which is why we got a very long bit, and it looked
Mm.
pretty. And then they get to the town at the end, and then there's a few frogs in there, and they duff them over, and that's the end of the game. That
Oh,
took 2 days, and it was
yeah.
fun. And then a game that I ran the year after that was, I don't know if you've heard of the battle. It's the Battle of Dürnstein-Loben.
No, not
Uh,
aware of it.
oh, okay. It's hard to describe it. Massive, big mountainous terrain,
Mm.
huge, big river, a little fortified town, and some French are basically have got to hold off massive amounts of Austrians. And they finish the game by getting into barges and going down the river and escaping that way. Or do they? Because the barges don't always make it. Uh, and again, that's fought over 2 days in over two rooms in the university. So yeah, I've done big games.
Yeah. Well, there's thing I try and sort of promote with these games that you're talking about is the social side of it, um,
Oh, yeah.
as opposed to one on one on a smaller table. There's something about being with a load of mates who are into the same thing. Usually there'll be drinking involved and curries on an evening.
Yeah.
There's definitely something about the whole experience of a big game in that sort of style.
Well, couldn't agree more. I mean, there must have been 30 of us on the Austerlitz, which is the biggest one we did.
Mm.
And yeah, we were all out on the Friday night setting it up on the Saturday because that's the anticipation. On the Saturday night we went out, we had drinking draft bass all night, and just the social, the crack is amazing, and that is yeah, that's priceless.
Yeah, brilliant,
So yeah,
brilliant.
I'll argue with that.
So we'll talk a little bit. I'm sure that our guests would expect us to talk about this the 6 mil and the 28 mil thing, and it's something I've talked with Sean about this, Sean Clark, and we 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 actually me and Sean are actually coming at the same problem from different directions. In that there are a lot of stereotypes, and I know you've talked about them quite a few times, but I'm sure we'll talk about some in a minute about 6 mil gaming. And it's the same with 28 big battle gaming as well. In that you kind of have people. I've got this. And I'll admit it's stupid. This 1/700th World War II naval stuff that I'm doing at the moment, and everyone's going, "Oh, you can't do that. You need a massive swimming pool to play it in, or something like that." Uh, and there's I've written some down here, so you can't do that in that scale.
Oh gosh,
Yeah,
yes.
they're so hard to paint.
Oh, yep,
It's just 12 man taking a flag for a walk.
yep. That's one
That
of mine. Thank you.
that scale's just for skirmish. I can't see them to paint them. Now, I have not put any scales on any of those comments,
Yeah,
but they could
yeah.
be
It goes both ways.
work both ways.
I would agree. Apart from the 12 men taking the flag for the walk.
You can do
Uh,
that. You can do that in smaller scales.
well, you can if somebody makes, but if they're doing that, they really are, I think, missing something. But
Yeah,
we get off the point. I agree with what you're saying. Yeah, it's the stereotypes and the lack of understanding
yeah,
on both sides.
yeah. I think people like to. Same with music. If you're a band, you've got to be a ska band or a heavy metal band or a pop band. You can't be a band. So Sean is Mr. 6 mil. I'm Mr. 28 mil Big Battle from Yorkshire, and if I don't can't do anything else. I mean, I've got big 6 mil ancient armies and American Civil War armies in 6 mil. Very much enjoy them. Still use the ACW especially, and Sean's the same. I think there's a danger, isn't there? I think of trying to stuff things into boxes and not looking at the wider picture.
Yeah, there is, and it's judging things in your own terms.
Mm.
Just because of the way I've had to be, a lot of this Mister Six Mil has almost been forced upon me. Because I've had to be. Sometimes I've had to be offensive to be defensive.
Yeah.
If you see what I mean.
Mm.
And I'm getting a reputation over the years, which is not always deserved. But there again, you know, especially people talking about you, they're not talking about you.
Yeah, exactly.
But everything's got its merits. I mean, my basic tenet would be the larger the battle, the smaller the figure. That's my take on it. Well, I'm quite happy to defend that. I realise that's not going to be everybody's,
Mm.
and this is a hobby where people should be. I'm going to say tolerant, of different ways of doing it. It's the intolerance or inability to understand, or not even wanting to understand,
Mm.
and sometimes that flips over onto the offensive. I've basically made a career out of doing things that people tell me that I'm not going to be able to do or can't do.
Yeah.
It would be impossible to do.
Yeah.
Because if somebody says you can't do that in 6 mil, oh, for goodness sake, I will do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I will absolutely do it because I hate that. But again, I am not anti big figures. I really am not. That is my makeup. It's just saying it's got to be appropriate, and also I hate an attitude that comes with some people who use big figures.
Yeah.
And I've had a lot of attitude thrown at me over the years.
Yeah. I mean,
Uh,
it's only. I mean, I've been doing this podcast for 2.5 years, nearly 3 years now, and I've started to get negative from smaller scale gamers, especially when I started this because they didn't quite understand what I was trying to do. Um, but I can see how you, as a manufacturer of 6 mil scales, you're going to be a target. Is probably the best way of putting it for those who want to just have a go at somebody who does a smaller scale, because you're there and you're visible, and you are a 6 mil manufacturer who, let's face it, you've got a high profile for 6 mil. So do you think that's you're kind of you've set yourself up, well, not set yourself up, but you're out there as a target for the pigeons to drop the poo on, if you like?
yeah, but I don't mind now
Yeah,
because as I found out in my very early years, when I started this, I was really quiet, honestly.
yeah,
I'd sit behind my little stand, and and all this would come out, and I would get a lot of aggression. I know this sounds absolutely daft. I'm not trying to play a victim card, but I get really nasty stuff coming my way, especially to my face.
mm.
One guy at a partisan came up to me when I was first up in the partisan shows and said, "You're taking up the space that somebody selling 28 mil figures could be doing."
So,
And if there was anything guaranteed me, not only to keep on going to partisan, but to expand the size of the trade stand, it was that moment. But I was getting a lot of this, and people think I'm joking. I'm not. And the problem is when I get people like that, I tend to actually be a little more verbally alert than
yeah,
them,
yeah, yeah,
be a little more thoughtful than them, and to be honest, any argument I could run rings around them.
mm.
And so I then found on the internet there was a horrible, horrible culture of banging into the small scales. So I started challenging people on forums, and that's really where I came to the fore. And because it was me, just me banging on, because nobody else was doing it. Yeah, I set myself as high profile and somebody to be shot at. But I don't mind. I really, really don't mind. I can take it,
Yeah,
and it's fun. It really is. There's nothing that anybody says to me that hasn't been said to me. God knows how many times before, and I've found how many different ways around the arguments are true. I can even predict what people are going to say next. So if anybody fancies having a go, please feel free.
you could
But
you could do like a load of envelopes, sealed envelopes, just like put the next one down to the topic they're going to come up with.
I made a 6 mil bingo card
Oh,
once.
brilliant!
I see the show. Can't paint things so small. How do you paint the eyes on that? Oh, I'd go blind. Oh, I'd rather stick hot red hot pigs, and I was just ticking them off during the course of the show until I got my bingo line. Bingo! I said to one guy, "Why? That's the one."
Yeah. Oh, fantastic, fantastic. And that's kind of what this show's always been about. It's been about trying to
had a sense of humour. There would be a little bit
I
cheeky.
love the humour you bring into your post, Ken.
Yeah.
To your show. They're absolutely brilliant, and I listen to all of them. I do listen to all of them regularly because you don't take it too seriously. You don't take yourself too seriously. And I think that is an amazing attitude to have.
Excellent. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. And I'm glad to know that what I'm doing is understood in some circles. Because, like you, there are people out there. Oh, I could paint the Mona Lisa better than Leonardo da Vinci, and somebody would go, "Oh, I
Yeah.
don't like the smile on that. You've got the eyes wrong."
Yeah.
But we're out there, and I think we're promoting the hobby. So sod everyone else.
Yeah.
I'm having a laugh and meeting loads of people that have kind of half known and half talked to over the years, like yourself. I've had a chat with you over the counter a couple of times before I did this, and I've got the opportunity to have you on the show, which is fantastic. And loads of people get to listen to us for hours while they're painting their figures.
And you're still wake up, wake up.
I actually get, you wouldn't believe this, Pete. I actually get more complaints that they're not long enough because
Oh my God.
because people sit down, and I'm sure there's loads of people there now. They sat down, they're painting, and they'll paint till the end of the podcast. So if it's only half an hour long, they're not going to get a lot of painting done. Whereas if it's it's a full on 3.5, 4 hour job, they get a couple of units sorted.
Right, okay. So I'll carry on if some of you now go to my web store. Right, I can track the orders on the computer.
Yeah.
Yeah. Every £10 gets you an extra 5 minutes.
Yeah, exactly.
What do you think, Ken?
Yorkshire Gamer 5
50,
gets you a 5% discount.
Ooh.
All right, 2.5. So back on topic. I'm sure you're going to go full out for this, but one of the things that we talk about in this section is always barriers for new players going big, and there
Yeah.
is obviously an inherent advantage for a smaller scale with this. So go.
Go. Okay. Are we talking someone entirely new to the hobby?
Yeah, why
Or
not?
are we
Why?
talking
Yeah,
somebody?
because I always tell the story of when I started. I've seen a massive game at the Steel Male Fist show
Yeah.
in North Manchester, and seen a massive 28mm game on a huge table, and how I was inspired by it rather than frightened by it. So I want new people coming into the hobby now to go, oh, I'd love to do that. 6mm could be a way of doing it.
Yeah. 6mm offers affordability, obviously. I mean, one Master Army packs is 600-700 men, and that's 45-50 quid. So affordability is built into it. And the surprising one, this is the one which is actually my biggest hurdle to new entrants, is easy to paint. They are easier to paint than the big figures. People think the big figures, you've got more room, you don't have to be so careful about all the little bits. But you do. Big figures demand big painting, and it can be quite time consuming. The little figures don't. The little figures can look individually pretty poor, but it's the sheer quantity put together and make a nice job of the basing. So it's getting over that hurdle. Once you've got over that hurdle, then you've got transportability. You don't have to develop gorilla-like muscles to carry these armies around. Yep. Oh, I can see a gorilla. Wow. Tell me, do your knuckles touch the ground,
They
Ken?
do, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Uh, and
Yeah.
storage. You can store 5, 6, 7,000 guys. In fact, that most of Wargame run about, that was one cabinet that was easily carried by one person. Your terrain doesn't take up half a garage. As a practical way of doing larger scale gaming, do skirmish gaming, it's got everything going for it. The two big hurdles is one, how do I paint anything so small? You have to get over that one. And two is nobody's heard of it because the hobby is dominated by big figures. So somebody coming into the hobby will usually come by Games Workshop and Warlord, who are 28mm. And you'll go to Partisan and you'll see 120 guys selling 28mm figures. You'll see 99
Yep.
tables all with 28 fingers on, and then this sort of like this sort of like thing in a corner. We might be selling some small scale stuff and a scrotty game on the outskirts. The hobby is geared around the big figures. That's just the way it is. So those are my big entry difficulties. So my professional life is spent getting people over
Yeah,
those.
I mean, a friend of mine's just come back to gaming, and he's got some of your figures, ACW, I think, and he was saying he was very impressed with how you've got. I think it's on your stand, um, like a unit in the various stages of painting to show people,
Yeah,
this is how you're doing it in blocks.
yeah, it's that sort of thing. I've got some on my website
Yeah,
do the same thing. You have to make it apparent and easy, and it isn't easy because people look at it and go, "It must be difficult because it's so small." Once you've done it, they're brilliant because they can motor and they can fly away with it. But it's this whole misunderstanding about the size of the figure must be more
mm.
difficult to paint. Absolute massive barrier for me. Has been since the day when I started, and it remains today as well, even with the higher profile we've got.
With we'll talk a little bit more about 6 mil when we do our talk about Baccus later on in the show. But before we finish the big game section, we've got to talk about reenactment because we've had somebody. I think we've only had one person on before who's done reenactment. So you were involved in ECW.
Yes, I was a member of the English Civil War Society for the best part of 2 decades, maybe a bit
Now
longer.
I don't want to cause any
Uh,
fights or anything, but sealed not English Civil War Society. What's the difference?
it's a difference between Manchester
I
City and
thought it
Manchester
was. I thought
United.
there'd be fighting involved.
Or, to be honest, more in my turf, Sheffield
Yeah,
United,
yeah,
Sheffield
yeah.
Wednesday. Uh, yes, they both seem to do the same things, but you ask any of their supporters what they think of the others, and you will get a very long, detailed,
Right.
foul-mouthed
Let's
description
not
of
go
the
there.
fact. No, English Civil War Society was initially a splinter group from the Seal Knot, who wanted to do things more
Yeah.
accurately, or to use a bus term, more authentically. Uh, and as a member of the English War Society, I happen to think that they did for many, many years. Uh, we were very proud of trying to actually get past myths and misconceptions of how reenactors should dress, behave, drill, or put on as accurate representation of of what we tried to depict as we could. Uh, at that stage, quite a few units in the SEAL Knot, while were as good as what we could do, quite a lot of them were still dressed in crimpline.
Right.
In fact, one famous guy, I was talking to a musketeer from the Knot, and he said, "No, I really have got to be careful when I find my musket because you get sparks
Yeah,
from
yeah.
the powder flashbang. My jacket's nylon and it keeps from melting
Oh
it."
no.
uh, I tried to keep a straight face because I wasn't being nasty, but
Mm.
what can you do? So yeah, I did that, and I eventually became the commanding officer of a regiment, Brights Regiment in the Civil War Society, and was involved in just trying to improve things with the regiment, make it again more authentic, uh, introducing period drill from the bottom up. We getting hold of a contemporary drill book, and instead of doing what we'd had to, which is sort of like a mishmash of things back from the when the knot was started in the
Mm.
1960s. It's like a mixture of half-seen drill books and modern British Army stuff, and occasionally people do a bit gadzookery to make it sound authentic.
Yeah.
To say, no, how were the orders given? Where did people stand? What did the officer actually do? Trying to reproduce that. Okay, miniature. The largest formation I ever got to be in charge of was only 150 guys. But believe me, 150 guys is a
Yeah,
challenge.
yeah.
I'll tell you
I can
now.
imagine. And did it educate you? Let's use that word. Did it educate you around those difficulties when it comes to recreating stuff on the tabletop?
I've got to say it did. Now,
Yeah.
you've got to be really careful here because you'll get reenactors saying, well, I've been reenacting and you're doing it all wrong.
Yeah.
And they're taking it from the point of view they're one of 10 guys in this unit and they think you can do this and that and that. And they're even committing the old wargaming trick of equating a whole unit to 10 guys. So I try to shy away from that, but I understand the nuts and bolts and mechanics of how an infantry unit works, of how the firings work within a unit, what it can do within a lot of time, and how how a pike division of a battalion can interact with the two musket arm divisions and how they support each other. Because it's a dynamic formation.
Yeah.
We've got a war game where we just have static figures. You fall into the trap of just thinking that's how they were. Well, they weren't. They were dynamic formations, although they remained in contact with each other. So you could push the shot forward or the pike forward, depending on the position you were in. You could take ground giving fire. You could lose ground giving fire. You could hold ground giving fire. You could turn it into a salve. It's understanding how all the drill works to enable you to do that, what you kind of do. And really importantly, and I've got to say this to anybody out there with an English Civil War army in any scale, are you listening? Right? Pikemen do not form up deeper than the musketeers.
Oh, excellent.
They form the same number of ranks. They don't do it. Don't do it. If you've got it now, just lose half the pikemen. Right? It doesn't work. They didn't do it. And even if Forlorn Hope says that you can do it, ignore it. Right, sorry.
Sorry. I like it.
I
like a bit of controversy on the show. I like that. Mine are the same. Mine are the same depth.
Good man. Good man. Sensible fellow.
Mostly because I'm saving money. Less figures. So how long were you involved in that for then? In the reenactment?
Well, I started in the early 80s and I stopped probably about 2001, 2002.
Is it a young? Is it a young person's game?
Well, it is now from my advanced years. I'm 20 years older from then. But yeah, they can be very physically demanding. I mean, I doubt I could do what I did then, should I pick up a pike. But for me, it wasn't physically demanding because, as I said, I realised very early on, you can be in the ranks and carry a heavy musket and get very dirty and smelly, or you can be in the pike and you get to carry this 18-foot long pile with a steel thing on the end and a helmet which never fits you properly. Or you could be a guy with a short stick, nice threads, who shouts a lot at other people but doesn't get dirty.
I'm signing up for that.
Yeah, I can do that. So yeah, I went along with the greasy pole of society politics and became an officer and ran a regiment for a while.
Excellent. Well, that's a nice little trip down the reenactment lane, and we'll have another short break now for our audience, and then we'll be back in a second with our features section. Right, we're back in the room, section 3. It's the features section featuring the quiz and Wargames Room 101 and Desert Island Wargame. I think Pete's going to be definitely -1 when we start this. We know one question is going to do differently to me.
Well, no, because you're actually going to be quizzing two people here.
Okay.
You're quizzing Peter PB, which is pre-Baccus.
Yeah.
And Peter AB, which is after Baccus.
The Baccus PB and AB, BC and AD.
So you got an early and a late one, so you may get two sets of answers.
Oh, let's see. We tried. Alex tried this. He tried to be me. Alex Sutherland tried to answer it as him and as me, and he didn't get 100%. He didn't get 100%. So 20 questions, one way or the other, and this is a test of how Yorkshire gamer you are, not how good a gamer you are. So question 1, Pete: go big or go home?
Yes and yes.
Go big.
Yeah, but you can go. I go big by going small. That's the
well. That's going big.
Go big by going
go
small.
Big. Excellent. Contrast paints, are they great or are they a gimmick?
Well, my first reaction is what? Because they haven't been released yet.
Contrast paints, they've been out for years.
No, they haven't been out for 20 years, have they?
Oh no, this is early Pete.
This is early Pete, yeah.
Early Pete
go, about 1990.
Yeah, watery paint.
Yeah, and for the later version, they're a wash.
They're a wash.
They're a wash with a bit more pigment.
Thank you. We agree on that. Paintbrushes, posh Southern Windsor and Newton or Yorkshire made Pro Art?
Okay. Well, neither. This is from both of us. It's
Yeah,
Yorkshire made Rosemary and Co.
yes, yeah. Up the road in Cowlin. I
Yeah,
know them well. I know them
and
well.
brilliant brushes. It's so good we sell them. So
Ah, mm.
yeah. So
I need to find out. They must be related as a company somehow. Pro Art's been there for years in Skipton. They're in a massive big old mill, and Rosemary and Co are in like a small like industrial house place in Cowlin, which is a village just outside Skipton. So I'm sure they must be related. It's like the Yorkshire paintbrush triangle. It's like rhubarb can only be grown within so many miles of Wakefield. But yes, I'll have to find that out. So, 96 figures, is that an army or a unit of pike?
it's an unfinished project, and that's for both of us.
Yeah, a small unfinished project. 6x4, is that a big size table? Is that a big game or a small game?
Right. Pre Baccus. That's just a Saturday afternoon game. That is.
Yeah.
Uh, post Baccus. Think of a game like that when you've got open flanks, even on a small table like 6x4. You get a
Ooh,
big game with that, and reserves.
ooh, like it, like it. You going to you're organising a battle? Are you going to go for points based or historical order of battle?
Well, you know the answer to that from both of us.
Yeah, yeah.
Points. Yep.
Another painting question. Mixing your paints. Are you going to go for a wet palette or an old bit of MDF?
A what? That's from the first Peter. And the second Peter goes, I sell MDF bases, so I just nick another one and do it on those.
Brilliant. That's what we like to hear. That's what we like to hear. Undercoating figures. Do you go black or white?
Uh, Pre Bacchus white, post Bacchus black.
Ooh, ooh, ooh. Hot drink time. Yorkshire tea or dirty mucky coffee?
Well, I have to say, for both of us, we're coffee drinkers. But,
Oh,
but, but any visitors who come to Bacchus who
yeah.
want a cup of tea, get Yorkshire tea. And we serve
Oh,
it to visitors at home. We have Yorkshire tea at home.
I'll give you half a mark for that. I'll give you half a mark for that. War games units. If it's historically correct, do you like them tightly packed or socially distanced?
Oh, tightly packed. Tightly packed. Both of
Right.
us.
Excellent. And choice of game, is it a 2 hour club game or a weekend monster game?
Am I allowed? It depends.
From Yorkshire, Pete, it should be one or the other.
Uh, they both got the merits. I'm going to say pre Bacchus, the monster game.
Yeah.
Post Bacchus, the shorter game. Mainly
Oh,
because of time constraints.
okay. No worries. The Nick Skinner question, and that's avocado. Are they just posh mushy peas?
Okay. Pre Bacchus, what? Post Bacchus, yuck.
Yuck.
Yeah. Okay, they're healthy for you, but they taste like wax.
Yeah, I don't get them at all.
Mushy peas have been boiled twice until every single bit of nutrients gone out of them. Right, they've got to be green.
Yes, very green.
Have a pork pie floating in them.
Yeah,
And
it's good.
because I'm now living in Sheffield, some endos.
Oh,
Gotta have
bit
some
of
endos.
hendos. Oh,
Yeah.
now we're talking.
So I think I get a point for that.
Oh, yeah, definitely. We love a bit of hendos here. Very, very nice. Um, the universal question now, Pete. There's no pressure on you here, but this is number 44, and nobody has answered this in a different way. And that's the round dice question. So that's spherical dice. Um, I have one here to show you. Somebody gave it to
Okay.
me.
You have to remember, I was working a long time ago in Games Workshop.
Is that
And
allowed on your table? Yes or no?
well, we were the first people to bring these into the country.
Oh God, it's your fault.
Right. Okay. And we got these round dice because everybody's fascinated by them. and we tried them. They kept running off the counter. And so they were useless, absolutely useless. So in the end, you know, we sold them all and never restocked them.
Yeah.
And that should answer your question.
And
horrible things. And even worse than that was a D100. Sorry, D100.
yeah.
It's
Oh,
100
with
fast.
tiny little faces on. Yeah.
Yeah. You never knew what it was, and it never stopped rolling. Anyway, that's equally bad.
Excellent, excellent. Question 14, rocking through them quite nicely. You down the chippy? Do you have haddock or cod?
Cod, both
Cod.
both of us. Cod, both of us.
Ah, you see, considering we're supposed to be diametrically opposed, you are doing extremely well on this.
Two sides of the same coin, Ken. That's all it is.
Question 15, going old school. Do you like a good table in a set of rules? Casualty table, armored penetration table, that sort of thing.
Absolutely. Every set of rules ever written has got tables in it. You can't do
Oh.
without tables.
Oh, lovely. Talking. My last guest, Paul Thompson, loved an armour penetration table, did Paul, from his days of youth. Oh dear. Right. So this is well, I'm going to be interested to how you answer this one. Question 16. 28 mil is king, yes or no?
Okay. Pre-Baccus. What? 25s, remember?
Yeah.
Yeah. Post-Baccus. Well, how can I put it? No.
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 No. Excellent. Excellent. Question 17. Unpainted miniatures, are they allowed on your table, yes or no?
Work of the devil.
Work of the devil.
Both of us. Yeah. Chorused.
Excellent. You might not. You need to choose one here because I know it's going to be difficult for you in Sheffield. But Bradford City or Leeds United?
Well, it will never, ever, ever be Leeds United. Ever.
Dirty
right?
Leeds. Dirty
I grew up
Leeds.
in Halifax when Don Revy was getting his team, and they were sort of like kicking everybody else off the field and winning a championship here and there.
Yeah.
And everybody in my class was supporting Leeds United, and there I was supporting Halifax Town.
Yeah.
My local club, which was
Yes.
still a league club at the time. And what? Why? It's Leeds. It's not your hometown. And I just got fed up with them after that.
Dirty
I even
Leeds.
supported Chelsea in the cup final against Leeds. That's how much you hate Leeds.
Question 19. I think I know the answer to this one, and this is Yorkshire or the other place over the hill.
Oh, the place that shall not be mentioned.
That one.
Yeah, well, that one. Well, you know the answer to that one.
I do. And then finally, Games Workshop, are they the work of the devil? Yes or no?
No.
No.
And that's both. That's both. They perform a valuable gateway. Okay, it is a bit tortuous sometimes, and this is why I don't think Warlord are the work of the devil either.
Yeah.
They may seem to be completely different to anything I do, but they are a means of getting people involved in the hobby. They brought a higher profile to the whole hobby, even though we don't regard ourselves as part of it. We are part of the miniature hobby, and yes, I think they are good as a whole.
Excellent.
Controversial, I know.
No, it's one of those questions that does generate discussion. That one, unlike the round dice one. Things. Thank you, Ian Fraser gave me that salute. Thank you. Pre-Baccus Pete got 82.5%, which is very good. That's very good. And post-Baccus Pete got 75%, which I think, which is excellent. Sean Clark got about 40. He was useless, absolutely useless. But I think he was.
Yeah, we just go to the Midlands.
I think he was trying to get the lowest score ever.
Yeah.
Bless him. We love Sean very much. And I'm so glad he's back on the air, by the way. I'm so glad.
Yeah, oh, so am I.
Yeah.
Sorely miss you, Sean.
Yeah.
Good to hear you back.
Yeah, his first guess was a bit dodgy, but...
yeah, well, beggars can't be choosers, can they?
Exactly. Our cheap. Right. Anyway, stop messing about. Second part of the feature section, Room 101. George Orwell's Room of Horror, and this is the bit where we might get my guests an opportunity to try and banish a pet hate of theirs from wargaming into
Oh, yeah.
Wargames 101, and the vault's opening behind me now. This has been going for a remarkable length of time, and people still come up with new ideas. So, have you had a think, Pete? Have you come up with a new one?
Oh, it's not difficult, and this one is going to be universally unpopular,
Oh, go on.
right? It's units, and I'm going to say primarily in the larger scales. I would say some of the larger scales, where every man in the unit is doing a different thing at the same time. And I'm going to go zoom to the English Civil War, where I will see this little 24 strong
Yeah.
battalion. And if those musketeers had been under the command of me at any one time, I'd be hitting them with a big stick because they're going to blow somebody's head off sooner or later. And you can't be reloading while the guy behind you has got the musket at port. And as for the pikemen, they've all got to do the same thing at the same time, otherwise you're going to trip over in a big heap of jackstraws. Appalling. Why wargamers tolerate it, I don't know, but they do. They think it looks more accurate. No, it does not. They should all be doing the same thing at the same time within the ranks and the files. End of. Argue with me.
Excellent. No, I'm not going to argue with you because I think that's a great one. Like you say, with the, I've not really thought of that one. That's a great one. Oh, oh dear. And that's what I love about this bit because people keep coming up with stuff, and I thought 6 weeks, 6 episodes, it had gone Room 101. But yes, and that's the thing now, isn't it? Back in the day when you had plastics or you had a limited supply of figures within a range, every figure in the unit would be the same, wouldn't it?
Yep.
Or your pike would be doing one thing and your shot on the side would be firing or whatever. But now, like you say, everyone seems to have forgotten that there's a drill book.
Yeah. Yeah. I spent, again, for my own English Civil War range, I sat on the sculpture because I knew exactly what I wanted. The drill poses are right. I've got musketeers firing and loading. They're in the right place. That right. Spent ages doing that.
Yeah.
And then I go to pick it up in a glossy magazine, and all these guys sort of like waving the muskets round and shooting moles or trying to spot aircraft. Oh, for goodness sake.
Yeah, at least when I have, at least when I do, I mean, I'm guilty of that on occasion, I have to say, but I do try and make it like a bit of a diorama in that the guy shooting isn't shooting the guy in front of him in the back of the head. So I've seen that quite a few times.
Yeah, exactly. I'm sorry. I'm getting all frustrated, agitated now.
But you see,
It's offending my wargaming self. It's offending my reenactment self. I'm gonna go out of the room and just calm down.
brilliant. You see that's why I enjoy Room 101 because my guests, when they get into it, it's something that's personal to them, and they just absolutely hate it, and they really just go off on one. And it's like Henry Hyde went off on one. Oh, it was fantastic, brilliant. It makes really because we can have a passion in this war game in this hobby without hating people, but you can
Yeah,
you can have pet peeves that really annoy you and wind you up that are just yours, and there might be a little
yeah.
backstory behind it or whatever. But yes, that is an excellent one. I do like that one. Thank you very much for that, Pete. And
You're most
and
welcome.
then finally on the this little section of features is the Desert Island War Game. On Radio 2, you go off on a desert island and you choose a number of records to take with you. So we're going to take a desert island game, and it's a war game. It can be a board game, a tabletop game, no limitations to figures or anything they want, just a game that you means something to you that you want to take with you. So what would that be?
It's probably Kingmaker.
Kingmaker, excellent.
I played it to death while I was at university, and I haven't found four like-minded players since then. And another new version's come out, and I'm going to get that. It's such a brilliant multiplayer game, and I love multiplayer games like that. So yeah, Kingmaker for me.
It is an awesome game and a classic, and we very similar to yourself. I played it to death at university. I think it was the Duke of Clarence always got killed. He never survived.
Well, in the desperation where you knew you got nothing, if you just put your little 10-point noble against the biggest stack on the board,
Yeah.
for some reason the odds were always with you and you killed everybody else.
I've got that. In fact, you can see it behind me. There.
There,
There.
yes. Yeah, I can just see it peek poking. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Excellent game. Excellent game. And you can take a book with you, other than a religious book of your choice. Is there a particular book that you'd like to take with you to the desert island?
Yeah, it's a 2-volume
Oh,
book. Am I
yeah,
allowed
yeah.
that?
2 volumes is good.
The book that came out a couple of years ago, it's called The Great North War Compendium. And it is absolutely bang full of fascinating articles about the armies, about the history of the period, about all sorts of modern things and individuals within that. It's a brilliant, brilliant book. And you can just dip into it and you find something new and something fascinating. So yeah, that's the one for me.
Is that kind of the seminal history that you would say, if you're going to get into Great Northern War, this is the book to go for?
Well, it's not a history book as such. It isn't just an account. But I would say I would agree with you. I think if somebody wants to just find out the flavour of it, go for it, because it sets up as a structure. This is what happened in the Great North War, and it'll take you through that. But that isn't the whole book. That's a chapter, and then it goes off into branches
Oh, right.
all the way through. Let's have a look at what the Turks were like. Let's have a look at the Cossacks. Let's have a look at the long, complicated, and quite mind-boggling history of the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, who seemed to afford everybody, including themselves, ceaselessly until it all fell apart. It's just all in there. It is just marvellous, marvellous introduction to the period, and the amount of detail in there, love that's gone into it. It's had academic contributions. I don't know how the guy managed to get it together, but it's a brilliant book.
Fantastic, fantastic. And then the final piece is you can take a separate Wargames unit, a Wargames unit on its own to the desert island, and that could be one that means something to you, or something that you've seen in a magazine that resonates with you, or has a personal meaning. Which one would you like to take?
It's on my Wargames. It's on my display stand.
Excellent.
I think you might have seen it. It's an English Civil War regiment, one of these big bases. So there's about 200 figures in it. And it's a representation of my old reenactment unit, Wright's Regiment.
Fantastic.
All dressed in grey with the colours in it. And that would be my unit to take with me.
Excellent, excellent. Well, that's a fantastic choice. A fantastic choice. So we'll end that section there and we'll move on to our big topic. Okay, it's time for the big topic, and we're going to talk to Pete about Baccus Miniatures and 6mm in general, and the show that he's got coming up in a few weeks' time called Joy of Six. So I suppose the obvious question to get us off started is we've had a bit of a potted history of your wargaming. So how did you become involved with it as a business, and starting Baccus Miniatures?
Ooh, okay. I've actually covered this on other people's podcasts.
Yeah, so
but
I'll give
you a potted history.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. During the sort of like mid-1980s, I was out of a job, and I started making buildings, because I enjoyed making big 25mm scale buildings, beautifully detailed, and trying to flog them, and nobody would buy them, not for the money I wanted. You'd be offered a fiver for 3 weeks' work. So I hit upon the idea of making one model, making a mold from that model, and then selling a resin cast from it, which seemed to be a better way of doing things. But because I was on the dole, my funds were very limited. I just couldn't afford the amount of rubber, because it's expensive stuff, and resin to start doing that practically. And then I thought I'd do it in 15, because, again, that's a scale I'm very familiar with.
Yeah.
My file leader stuff was in 15. I worked in 15 before. And again, just the economics were working against me. So very reluctantly, I thought I'd have a look and see what was around in 6 and see what it needed. So I made some 6mm scale buildings. That's how it started. It's as simple as that. I never set out to do 6mm as a scale.
Yeah.
And if that hadn't happened, you'd be having a conversation with me about 28mm stuff, and I'd be despising all the little stuff. History works in strange ways.
Yeah.
Through a fairly convoluted process, I produced a little range. I carried on selling that when I didn't get a job. I worked with a guy who helped me start making some figures. I split from him and set up my own independent figure making company with me doing the sculpting. And to be honest, to start with, because I was actually earning proper money at my proper job, Baccus was just an outlay for me to sculpt. I could sculpt and make something, and I made the armies I wanted. So it's no surprise that the first two armies that I produced was an English Civil War army
Yep.
and a Great North War Swedish army, followed
Yeah.
by Russians, Poles, and the rest. I spent years walking around people's manufacturers' stands going, "We're using Great North War figures." I'm being laughed at. The only way I can do this is to do it myself. So yeah, I did that, and that's really how it all started. It was by accident. It was something which was a part-time thing for a bit of pin money, and I say because I enjoy doing the sculpting, get my sculpts out there and painted and on the table, because it's very satisfying having an army where you know that you've actually produced it beginning to end, and that's quite a buzz.
So that sculpting process then, is it something that you tried before? It's not something that you would naturally have a go at school or something. So how did you realise that you could sculpt?
How can I put it? Right. You remember I said I was working for a guy who just gave me a hand getting
Yeah,
his metal figures? I was selling my buildings alongside the stuff he sold at shows. He was selling 28s and 15s.
yeah,
My little 6mm buildings were selling really well, and I was selling fortification stuff like that. And he had a look at it and thought, well, he'll make some 6mm figures from him to sell alongside my buildings. And he did, and they were dreadful. Absolutely dreadful.
yeah,
I looked at that and I thought, I must be able to do as well as that. I can't do worse. So I picked them up, and I did some sculpting. My first figures were bloody awful.
yeah,
But you have to remember, in doing the little 6mm buildings, I was actually working very, very fine level of detail. I sold gabions. The original gabion I actually wove in 6mm with fine wire. Right. I was used to getting down and dirty in the small scale. So that was just the next step up. And like any process, you get a little bit better every time you do it.
mm,
And yeah, my first ranges were pretty ropey, but by the time I got to the Swedes, the English Civil War, I was actually reasonable at it. And certainly, to my mind, they were as good, if not better, than here on the market and the scale.
yeah,
And I took it from there. But I've no artistic training. I've no skill in that sort of way whatsoever that was there before. It's just something I did, entirely self-taught.
and as the company's progressed, then have you continued to do all the sculpting, or is there other people involved in that area now?
Oh, I don't do any anymore. I don't.
You've retired.
It's really sad. It's really sad. I don't have time. Running a company, even one of the size of ours, is incredibly demanding of time. And
Mm.
two, I found people who are better at it than I am. Better than I ever was, really. And I'm systematically taking some of the older ranges, which I sculpted, and having them redone. And they're much, much better for it. We're going to keep some of my stuff in there. You won't lose it entirely. But yeah, on the whole, let's find people who are suited best for what they're doing.
Yeah. So what does Bacchus consist of these days? Just you got yourself. Who else is involved?
Right, well, there's my wife, Lindy.
Mm, yeah.
She helps out with the admin. In fact, to be honest, while we're doing this, she's sorting seating plans and posters for the Joy 6.
Oh,
She
brilliant.
helps me sort of get rid of mail order and things like that, so she's absolutely valuable. Uh, we have a full-time caster, Tony. He works with us, and he's our main producer of Little Men. We have a part-time caster, who is also our part-time art director.
Oh,
He
very good.
works 2 days on casting and 1 day on starting producing some original artwork for our packaging presentation. So that's new. We have Andrew. Andrew works for us, and he is our mold maker. And very importantly, he is our model maker, and he's fundamental to the number of new releases we've had in our World War II vehicle range, which has been like a torrent in the past couple of years. So
Yeah.
he's behind that really, and he also helps out with casting, and I do everything else. I'd like to think that basically means me sitting with my feet up on the desk. Thinking the people to. Sadly, it doesn't work out that way, and I will do
Does it
everything
not?
from sweeping the floor to buying the loo rolls in to it's a glamorous life running a small
Yeah.
company.
Yeah,
Jack
exactly.
jack of
Exactly.
all trades, yeah.
Yeah. I remember listening to you on Sean's show on God's Own Scale through the COVID period, and it kind of went a little bit crazy for you, didn't it? You had to like turn the taps on and off.
I did. It was really unfortunate circumstances. We just redesigned the workshop. We've
Mm,
completely gutted it, and we made it really, really efficient. So the machines are within easy reach of each other, in reach of the molds, and we were going really, really well. We've got a team of casters in, more people than we've got working for us now. Then COVID hit, and social distancing and workplace rules, but we couldn't get anybody in. One person at a time to work, and remember we didn't know how it was transmitted. So there's all the molds. So you couldn't have people picking one mold up and then using it because the fear of transmission to another person. Uh, so we basically furloughed everybody apart from myself and Lindy, uh, and I did all the casting. And Lindy did all the admin, basically getting it out. And between us, we kept the company going. But our production went through the floor. Obviously, we couldn't produce the same as 3, 4 casters can.
mm,
But demand went through the roof because all over the world, there were very
yeah.
bored wargamers who suddenly decided this is a great opportunity to do some painting. And we were faced with this horrible dilemma. What do we do? And it meant that basically we had to open the shopping cart. And when it looked like we were completely overloaded for the next 3 months, stop it, clear the backlog out. We could have carried on taking orders ad infinitum. I'd still be clearing the back orders now.
Yeah.
It'd have been brilliant for the bank account, brilliant in terms of cash flow. Uh, but we don't work that way. We couldn't take money that we couldn't possibly fulfil with a reasonable amount of time. It just wasn't right. So it meant that I think it was, where are we now? We're now 2013, 2023, 2020. Shopping cart was open for a total of 9 days throughout the entire year
Wow.
because we'd
What?
open the shopping cart. People would find out, and it'd be like a feeding frenzy and get their orders in. And you'd be sat. I don't know if you get email notifications. We get an notification when an order comes through. You'd be sitting at the computer, be going ka-ting, 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 and it's lovely. But at the same time, I'm going. I'm going to have to shut teeth soon. We can't carry on like this. So yeah, that's what happened. Uh, it sounds brilliant. It sounds really good. Having to do this, but it was hard. We actually took less money than we'd done the year before or the year after, uh, but it kept going. That's the main thing.
Yeah. But it must have been a good feeling to know that people were still after your product and after
Oh,
it in such a way that you couldn't cope with it. It's much better than not having
oh,
enough.
yeah, it is. If we'd have been sat there with no orders coming in, that's really depressing. No, it is great. The feedback I had from that was people were so grateful for us to produce the figures under difficult circumstances, get them out, because it stops people going mad.
Yeah.
That's put too fine a point to it. Now, I don't stress that point. I make little men. We're not into mental health specialists like that. But it was therapeutic for an awful lot of people. And I think it was important that we managed to keep that flow going. Not only us, but the whole industry. The whole industry did marvels over that period. We kept it going out. And I think it was important that we did so.
Yeah, I mean, it's something I'm big on, and you probably know I did a podcast on mental health with Henry, and I
Yeah.
think the focus that it gives people with projects is really good for people's mental health, and I can certainly see during that COVID period. I mean, I could continue to work all the time. It didn't, other than quieter roads, it didn't really change my day to day business, but um, I could imagine people sat at home what do I do? What do I do?
Yeah, board riddles.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you could sell people finishing projects off because number of bases we were selling. So people
Yeah.
put stuff out the door, and our flag sheets. I mean, we've got thousands of flag sheets, and people were because when they're finishing this army off, because that's all they were buying, bases and flag sheets.
Yeah. Oh,
So they've had
fantastic.
the metal lying around for ages. So yeah,
Fantastic to hear. Bringing that conversation up to today, some people or some manufacturers in the war games industry have kind of changed the way that they operate following COVID and have withdrawn from going to shows and have become just purely an online presence. Where do you sit with that? Do you still think it's important to get out there and meet people in person at shows?
yeah, it's vital as far as I'm concerned. It's vital two ways.
Mm,
I think it's really important the customers get to see you and get to talk to you, can ask you about things. I think that's really, really important. Uh, and from my point of view, I love going out to shows
yeah,
and talking to people. As you can tell, I just talk. I'm a very gregarious sort of person. I like to meet my customers. I like to put faces to names.
yeah.
Uh, Many of my customers have become friends.
Mm,
But it's important. It's getting used to felt. People can ask you what's coming up, so you can let them know. It's also keeping your finger on the pulse of the hobby. We don't work in isolation with everybody else in this business. We are one part of a much, much bigger thing. So it's really good to go around to a show, see what's happening, observe what the trends are, find out what new products are coming out. That's really important. A war game show, a good war game show is the best place to do that. Somewhere like Partisan is amazing for that. Again, it's just getting you, just being there.
yeah.
I wouldn't attract new customers if wasn't doing the hard yards of finding somebody looking at my stuff going, I can't pay anything so small. And me going,
Ah,
have you ever tried?
yeah,
And I have built a business on being prepared to talk to people
yeah.
without being nasty or condescending and say, yeah, you can pay them. Look, just have a go.
And I think that's extremely important, and I think it's very disappointing that some manufacturers have stepped back from the show scene. It can be expensive, and I've talked to other guests who are manufacturers around the costings and etc. But there is that hidden benefit of these people who come back and order online after they've seen you at a show, and it isn't obvious from the sales on the day how
No,
much business you've generated.
no, we don't make a loss at shows.
Mm,
It's not like when I first started doing this. We don't make a loss at shows. We don't always make a vast amount of profits, but we always cover our costs. And getting ready for a show, it's a massive effort, keeping all the stock up to date, things like that. It really is a huge effort, but it's one which pays, as you said before, dividends beyond that 4, 5, 6 hours you spent at that show. It reaps reward in reinforcing uh, the belief to say it's somebody who's wavering,
mm,
somebody's still curious. Just have a little word with you, a little bit of reassurance, and then you plant it in there. A couple of guys who are planning a project, they might be looking at doing 15. Oh, look, 6 is an alternative. We've had a quick chat. They've not bought anything. They've walked away and thought about it. They've come back.
yeah,
That sort of thing, you can't put figures on it, but keeping a contact with customers, talking to people, and being seen, I think is vital. And I couldn't understand why people aren't doing it. The effort is enormous. It really is. I don't think people, unless you've actually been here, you can't understand how much you've got to put into just getting ready to go to one small show. Uh, and this is, I think, some show organisers don't understand. I get invites to more shows I could possibly do.
yeah.
They can get really disappointed the fact that I won't turn up. It's only 30 miles down the road. It's in the same city. Why can't you come? And we physically can't take any more on that we're doing.
I think as us war gamers get older, walking around a war game show is tiring. Actually having to load in, set up, do the war game show, and then when it's finished, pack up and go home. That
Yeah.
yeah, it's. I mean, I many years ago, I did a bit of work with Hallmark Figures with Steve Royan, who
Oh,
has
yeah,
left
yeah.
the business now. But I did a few shows with him, and I was tired, and I was a young lad in those days, so I know what you mean.
Well, Steve Ryan's stand was a small stand. Have a look at the size of ours. and the stuff we take, and that's all going to be knocked down, packed into the van,
Yeah, exactly.
But like I say, it's a price you pay, but you can't do it too often. You can't do it too often. It's at most 15% of our overall sales from shows. Mail order is where our business
Yeah,
works.
it's good to see you out there. And we're both singing from the same sheet on that. I think it's disappointing, as I say, that some people stepped away from the scene. So we'll move on to scale. Have you ever thought about doing anything other than 6 mil?
No,
Nope.
no, because my business philosophy was right from the start: do something better than anyone else. Don't just try and do everything better than anybody else. And I learnt this from, again, I mentioned this guy who I was working with when I was doing little buildings, and he was doing figures, but he was doing everything. He was trying to do 25 mil, he was trying to do 15 mil, he was trying to do scenery. He was like chasing the rainbow. Oh, this is selling well, Ted. We'll do a bit of this. So nothing was ever finished. Some
Always a
stuff
problem.
wasn't bad, but the range is, And I saw that if you dilute your activity, if you dilute your energy across too wide a front, you will fall over. So, having decided to go with 6, it's why we call the company Baccus 6mm. We set the stall out from the beginning. That's what we do. We don't do anything else. But we're going to do it. I want to do it better than anybody else. Now, I'm sure my fellow manufacturers in this scale would care to dispute that. But if you want to say that that's our mission project, our project mission, whatever.
Yeah, one of them. One of them.
Yeah, one of them. It's a management
One
jargon.
of them. So, and this isn't a go at 6 mil. All scales are like this. So, if the 6 mil figures, if I go back and I buy the old Heroics and Ross 1/300 6 mil figures, they'll be a different size to yours, that are a different
Yeah.
size to say Adler, which are probably at the high side of 6 mil. So where did you decide what your 6 mil scale was going to be?
It emerged when I sculpted. My style was chunky than Heroics and not quite as chunky as Adler.
Yeah,
And that's how I sculpted. It
yeah.
wasn't purpose, I'm going to do it differently. It's just what came out of the green stuff and the milling put on the armature.
And it worked. And it worked.
I've been accused of this. You're making it non-compatible with everybody else's, so people have to buy yours. No, it's just what I liked.
Yeah, you enjoyed it.
Just what came out. If you don't like it, you don't have to buy it.
Yeah,
You know?
exactly. And one thing that kind of instantly says Baccus Miniatures is the strips of figures.
Yes.
So just tell us where that idea came from and what you see as the benefits of the strip system.
Okay. Well, to be fair, heroics were always sold on strips, and irregular, again predate us, was sold on blocks. I think one is better, but a very large base or plinth.
Yeah, but heroics used to be on a strip where they'd be forward, wouldn't they? And you used to have to cut the individuals off. Yeah,
Yeah, they're based in file, one behind the other.
Yeah,
What I want to do is to have a look at I like the irregular style because basically, you don't have to do much to get them on the table. But I did like the irregular execution. So what I thought was, how do I actually get really nice figures, but they're practical for war games? And I came up with the idea of I don't think it's rocket science, of just basing 4 figures on a 20mm strip facing forward. And then you could press that in the mold press back to front.
yeah,
So the mold line is down the centre of the figures. And then you can then build a unit from that. Now, if we're looking at my infamous 60 by 30 bases, it meant you a 24 or 36 strong unit
yeah.
by stringing 3 strips across the width of that would give you frontage of 12 figures. And that seemed to gel together quite nicely. Cavalry and skirmishers still got to be put in strips in file, one behind the other for chopping up. And we went from there. And it proved to be really popular because it was easy for painting. You could 6 dabs of glue, and you've got a unit glued to a stick for painting. 6 more dabs of glue, and you've got a unit based on the base.
Yeah,
you weren't messing around with too many single figures. It
Mm.
was simple and convenient, and it also enabled me to do some standard packaging. Like I said, I worked in retail a lot, not just with workshop, but I worked in retail before then, and I understand the value of packaging and presentation, and so I was able to get a nice pack of infantry for 96 infantry. That's 24 figures. That's 4 of my little units at 24 to a unit. It all came together around that.
And I mean, obviously you're casting a base as well. So was that a consideration for production costs in the fact that you're adding more metal that isn't figures that is a base?
Not really. The actual cost of metal within a figure, although it's become more important as metal's gone up, is not the major factor. And to be honest, it more than makes it for itself in handling. If you cut a mold properly and you spin, you get, let's say, 24 strips out of a mold. If you've got a nice solid base, you can just twist them straight off the strip, off the sprue, and they come up quickly, easily, and accurately.
Oh, good.
So in the actual terms of production, it makes common sense as well, like that.
Excellent. So, is there, we talked a little bit about differences between scales and stuff. Is there any challenges that arrive in casting in a smaller scale? I'm thinking about making sure that pikes come out and they don't break easily. Is there something you need to do to compensate for the scale with things like that?
Yeah, you're facing this perennial difficulty of casting weapons, making the weapons so they're robust enough and thick enough to cast, but not so robust you end up like the old minifigs telegraph
Yeah,
poles.
yeah.
Uh, and I've always tried to cast as near to scale as I can within practicalities.
Mm,
But that brings its own difficulties. And the fact that if you've got a pike, which is a long, thin piece of metal, you are casting right at the edge of the technology.
yeah.
It's rubber casting. It really is difficult to get those. So the molds, if you ever come down to our workshop, have a look, are covered in little scores and vents.
Yes. Yeah.
Andrew, he's our mold maker. He's brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And every so often we'll give him an older mold and say this isn't working properly, and he'll do unspeakable things to it. He'll drill holes in it. He'll attack it with a scalpel just to get the air out to enable the metal to flow. And then you've got to sometimes all the molds are individual, so sometimes we'll have to spin a mold a little bit faster, or we might need to give it a hotter pour of metal or a colder pour. Again, that's different. And if you're casting larger lumps of metal,
Mm.
let's say some of the vehicles, you can't cast them the same way you cast infantry because the metal will be too hot and it cools with pitting in it. So you've got to run it for longer, you've got to run it cooler. They all present different difficulties to overcome. So it's a black art.
Yes,
It is an absolute black.
it very much, very much. I remember sitting with Steve Royan when he was making molds for AB Miniatures, and he was doing those little vent things, and it was some
Yeah,
dark art.
it really is. I used to make the molds,
Yeah.
and Andrew, I've got to say, is I think basically sacrificed a black goat with his shins round it somewhere naked on a hilltop around Huddersfield because he can do things that normal mortals cannot.
Yeah, exactly. And have you ever considered other materials apart from metal? Has anything ever, some people are doing plastic and resin and supercast and all these different things. Have you experimented or looked at any of those?
I'm always looking. We don't stand still. I looked at plastic, but the initial investment is massive for us. We're a tiny company with no massive financial reserves, and I'm not willing to go out and take a 40, 50 grand loan on the off chance plastics might work. I was originally wanting to do popular World War II vehicles in plastic. That was my original plan, but that just proved impractical. Uh, I have tried casting in resin, but resin does not work with 6mm. I proved that, and I know resin because that's what I did buildings
Yeah.
in before. That was never going to fly. I've looked at this CR system, and I'm not altogether convinced.
Right.
Uh, I have seen results that look really good, but that's what the manufacturer showed me. I've seen commercial results that look a bit blobby. And the thing about 6mm is you've got to have hard detail. Soft detail would actually kill them. Because of the painting style, you need incised heavy detail, because a lot of people will just put base coats on, then wash. And unless you've got really good crisp detail, it ain't going to work. So that's where we are with that. If there is a practical way of using the materials that they offer benefits,
you'll look into it. And I think 3D printing. I've spoke to a couple of people. There just isn't the volume of output with the 3D printing to make a viable business from it.
well, 3D printing is another thing altogether. There are a lot of people doing it. The business model seems to be you sell your STLs. And there's a company working in 6mm Turner Miniatures, and he's doing really, really well. And he knows what he's doing. Basically, does it on a Kickstarter. So you get your money up front, and then so whatever you work from these 10, 20, 30 grand on one of these, you sell your STLs, and then you move on to your next project. But I suspect there's comparative little resell from that, except to third-party printers who will print armies. But by the time you're getting somebody else to print an STL army for you, it's not really any great savings on doing metal.
Yeah.
And also, resin has got its drawbacks. I'm it sounds like I'm dissing the opposition. I'm not. 3D printing is here to stay.
Yeah.
It's how much of a market share it's going to have, but it's not. It's not as brilliant as the proselytizers and the early adapters would tell you. There are serious issues with it, but yeah, as technology goes on,
yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see how we go 5 years down the line, and how figures that are being printed now that cure with UV, how they react having been exposed to UV for 5 years.
Yes,
I think that's.
I wasn't going to mention that, but yes,
yeah, I think that's an interesting question. And having been,
I've got a 3D printer myself. We use it. We use it at work. I'm very familiar with the technology, and its pluses and its cons. But we get vehicles for our World War II range. The masters are designed, the CAD designed.
Yeah.
But to get the quality that we need to produce the models to the quality we need, we have to send them away to a really high-end specialist printer. And the only one we found is out in the States. And these are absolutely beautiful models, but they cost an arm, a leg, a turret, and a track for one model.
Yes, and then you need to sell them to wargamers who are tight.
Yeah, so we make them in metal.
Yeah.
We get a beautiful master model, and then we sell that in metal, which is, again, to come back to the original way. At the moment, the only practical way of doing it.
Excellent, excellent. Well, a little bird tells me that you are planning a new range of Italian Wars stuff very soon.
I wondered when you asked about this, yes.
Now, that might be something I know a bit about. So I thought this would be a nice or a good chance for you to kind of explain the process of starting a new line of figures, and what your, how do you set your aims and objectives for a new range. So when did you get the idea for Italian Wars, and what's your plans?
Okay, well, we'll start with how do we get the idea of Italian Wars. At the moment, the Baccus range chronologically has got gaps in it.
Yeah.
And we've laid down sort of markers. So we have got an English Civil War range. We had an English Civil War range. We had a Great North War range and a Spanish Succession range. And last year, the year before, I filled that little hole by producing a mid to late 17th century range to join them together. We have a Wars of the Roses range, which will actually do for most of Western Europe at the same time. But we've now got this big gap between that and our English Civil War range. And there's a lot of history they fill in there. Now, Italian Wars sits front and centre there. And it is also a range which, if we can bring it to completion, to the completeness that we want, offers a springboard later to just join up to the early 17th century, prior to, let's say, the Condottieri.
Yeah.
So that's where the Italian War sits. It's been a long-standing project of ours. It just takes time to get around to it. So that's the first thing. Now, the next thing is what we're getting into very, very shortly. And I may actually be having a word with you about this, which is to decide what is going to be composition of the range, what's going into it. Because, there's a fair few bits and pieces to assemble. and you start being a Yorkshireman. You don't start with the principle of what can I do.
Yeah.
It's what don't I have to do, right? So it's no use producing figures which, while interesting in their own right, aren't really going to sell or aren't really
Mm.
that necessarily too peripheral. Uh, you've also got to identify figures you're not going to sell really well, and let's see what we can do to really give them a bit more oomph.
Yeah.
So, for example, with the Landsknecht and the Gendarmes, we're looking at doing something we've never done before, which is working with masters with separate heads and bodies,
Ooh. Mm.
so that we will have a multiplicity of uh, what's the word variations with that, because that is true to the period.
Yeah.
Now that is going to cause a lot of technical issues. There's a lot of sculpting in there, but it will be worth it because we will have a definitive range in both of those. Not necessarily for everybody, but we will certainly be looking at those two key codes to use that process. But it isn't just the imperialists and the French. We've got the Spanish to do, and we've got the Italians to
Yeah.
do. But you might, I don't know. I might say, well, what's the difference between the Italian gendarme and the French gendarme? I couldn't tell you. If I judged it that actually there's not a lot apart from the accent, then it's going to be one gendarme figure. I may find that we've got Milanese armour, which looks so much different to the stuff they produced in France, which is made out of bacon oil. I'm going to have to do two sets.
Yeah.
Yeah. We don't know yet.
Yeah.
So we're at that stage now where we've got a vague idea of what we're going to do, and we're going to start burrowing down into the separate sections of what we have to do, and then start getting into the sculpting and the assembly. So it's a big project.
Yeah. So do you plan out what the range is going to be? This code is going to be this code's going to be that, and try and work to a schedule to get them released.
Yes. However, the release schedule, as anybody who knows anything about Baccus,
Yeah.
well, schedule is just a word that scores you a few points in Scrabble. Doesn't actually mean anything. We do it as best we can, but these things take time. We're working with sculptors. Sculptors are humans; they take time. We have failures. You have this great idea, try this pose. The master gets trashed in the mold. It didn't work. You're back to square one. So
Yeah.
there's lots of things.
I think it's very important from a gamer's point of view and a customer's point of view that manufacturers do full ranges. There's nothing more annoying than having, let's say, a 28mm World War One Mesopotamia range from Gripping Beast that's 20 plus years old, and they still haven't made cavalry for it.
Yeah, I could not agree more. I really could not. And
It's
again, this is
so annoying.
but it's frustrating as well, because when somebody goes, "Will you do this Italian Wars range?" And I'm going, "No, I'm not going to do the Italian Wars range until we finish the resculpt of the Great North War." But I want the Italians. You're going to have to wait until we finished the resculpt, and that's how we work. It's very boring. It's very methodical. I really, people have now got the confidence. If I say this is the first release, this is what is going to be complete range, they know that's what we're going to do. We will follow through. We spent 5 years doing the entire World War One range, the Great War range. And I said we would do everything, including the bloody Belgians, and we did them. The last lot that we did were the Belgians.
Yeah.
So I stuck to my word there, right down to the dog cart pulled machine gun.
Oh, brilliant.
So, but
Brilliant.
it is important. But so we set our stall out right at the beginning. We know what the range to be when we finished it. We've got a list of all the codes, and we work through that. And we get to the end.
Oh, fantastic. So final question on the Baccus itself. What do you see the future for Baccus? Is it more of the same and develop, or have you got something in the pipeline different?
I'd like to say something different, but it isn't. I mean, we've sort of set our path in the fact that there's all these bits of chunks of history, and we've got to do them. So it's filling in the gaps in the range. We're a very Eurocentric range. So I might look at doing. I'm constantly being asked to do conquistadors and Mesoamerica and things like that. That's interesting. I might want to do some of that. Might want to look at some Asian ranges or some Chinese, and say move out of the comfort zone there. We'll have to see. I've not made any serious plans on that. I want to do some more ancient stuff, but do the chariot armies. So we want to do more of that. So it's basically more of the same. I'm getting more into the gear of getting our Polymos publications out. So we'll be seeing more of those. But there's very little else. There's a small matter of actually completing every vehicle for every theatre of the Second World War. And there could be artillery pieces, infantry, and support to go with that. So that's a little side one we don't really get this time. Oh, and aircraft.
Oh, excellent. Well, plenty to keep you going. Plenty to keep you going.
We'll do a fantasy range.
As well. Oh, my
well.
God. Well, I look forward to seeing more and more. So we've got an event coming up in the next couple of weeks. And this is the Joy of Six show. And I believe is it the 10th anniversary this time?
Well, it's our 10th year.
10th year.
It's our 10th year. We've not done 10 shows because COVID robbed us. It's our 10th year, yeah. I'm amazed it's made it this far. But yeah, I think it's something to celebrate.
Yeah, so it's obviously it's a different show from many of the others in the calendars, and that is because it is 6 mil centric.
Yep.
So I know why you've done it, but just explain to people what your thoughts were about setting it up and what you thought you would do with the show.
Okay. Well, the very first impetus was it. I'll put it this way: if you go to a Wargames show and you're a 6 mil wargamer, the nearest analogy, let's say partisan, which you mean to.
Yeah.
Right. It's like a little chamber orchestra playing a beautiful piece of complicated but subtle chamber music in a room full of 20 heavy metal bands with all the volume turned up to 11.
Yeah.
Yeah. The only reporter being there from Kerrang. You've no traction within a Wargames show under normal circumstances. In a marvellous piece of lack of self-awareness, a respondent to my advertising for a previous Joy 6 show on a more general forum turned around and said he had absolutely zero interest in going to a Wargames show that didn't cater for his scale at any way, had no traders for his scale. And why would he bother to go to a show like that?
Yeah.
Now just reverse that. If you're a 6 mil gamer, there's no trade fans apart from us. There's no 6 mil games, and when they do report it, there's nothing of interest. So my original idea was just a gaming day. Guys could get together, bring 6 mil armies, play a game. I had the Baccus trade stand there, and to my great surprise, this Baccus gaming day suddenly found other traders because we all know each other saying, "Can I come up and sell figures?" Well, yeah. Why? Okay. And people say, "I don't want to come along. I want to do a participation game," and I'd got this. By the time I'd finished the first Baccus gaming day, I'd got this little show, a miniature, even a miniature 6 mil show. So we did another one, and after that, we found more people wanted to do more of the same. It grew. So I had this long-held idea of doing something like this. I thought, well, now's the time. We put together the first Joy of 6, and it was billed as, it's almost like a safe haven. 6 mil gamers to a place where everybody speaks a language. Nobody's going to ask damn fool questions. They can know that if there's trade stands there's something that'll be of interest to them, because we were getting trade stands it wouldn't normally see. It was really appreciated. We did a few different things. We had what we call the Baccus Sunday Grill, which is where I'll stand up in front of an audience and they can throw questions and rotten tomatoes at me, which is quite fun. They try and catch me out. I try and avoid answering a question.
Yeah.
So that's quite good fun. And we have a panel. We get luminaries from the hobby to come and sit on the panel, and then people throw questions at them, and that is really popular. We've had some excellent guests on there as well. All the editors, the 3 editors of the big glossy magazines, have all been on our panel, and the show's just grown. It keeps on. It's a bit like a snake. Every so often it grows a bit bigger. It's got to shed its skin and move somewhere else, and it's just amazing. The guys who put the games pull all the stops out. Some of these games are absolutely incredible. They would grace any war game show and get admiring glances or write-ups. They're just absolutely amazing. They really were too, I'm not going to say scared, apprehensive about doing this at a normal war game show because they weren't sure what sort of reception they get. Here, they're there, and there's people who are appreciative of what they're doing there all day, looking to them, talking to them, asking them questions about it. So it's like a little safe haven for 6 mil gamers. But at the same time, I didn't want to make this a ghetto. This isn't a place where we can all feel safe from the big bad outside, big scale figure gamers. They can all go away. I want to show what we can do at the small scale and why people should be taking notice of it. And some of the, well, I don't know if you saw a picture of Per Broden's Poltava game.
I was going to mention Per in that he produces games that are absolutely amazing, and I had a good chat with him at Salute, and his games could grace any show,
Yeah,
or in fact, I would say museum as well, because they really are a spectacle, and it's like a pin. Not they're something to aim for,
yeah.
and some a thing to aspire for, as we talked about earlier on, for many other people. And Pear's stuff is fantastic to look at.
It is. And the nice thing about it, and this is why I would contrast that with some of the best games you're going to see at Partisan,
Hmm.
even the best games rely pretty much on the same 2 or 3 things to get the wow factor. Either the number of figures or the quality of the terrain or just the quality of the painting and things. They rely on just those three or four small things, and then they put them together. And so you get a lot of repeat of the same sort of high quality stuff all the way through. I'm not going to say it looks samey because it doesn't. They're very different games, but that's the same things on show. Per Broden's Poltava brought something completely different to the table.
Yeah.
You've got the spectacle, you've got beautiful terrain, but you've got the terrain not just on the table, you've got it with the setting of the surrounding area as well. So the battlefield was explained just in one single view. It was a tour de force.
It
But
was.
he's not the only one doing this. There are other people doing equally impressive creative games at the show. So what I want to do is to actually get people who wouldn't normally use 6 mil, or even the 6 mil curious, as I call them, just to come along, just come
Yeah.
along and have a look
Yeah.
and see if we can change their minds about what we can do. And also, I'm trying to get into the guys who are doing these games now. You've done this for the Joy 6. Now get off your arse and take them out to other shows as well. Don't hide light under a bushel. Have the confidence, have the chutzpah to go out and take what is excellent stuff and put it on display for others.
Well, Charles Roundtree's been out with his games,
Oh,
hasn't he? And what an amazing! It looks like a. It looks like an overview photograph.
it's brilliant. Well, he's been winning prizes right, left, and centre with that. He's a perfect example of what we're talking about. Brilliant, brilliant. And I can't wait to see what he's doing with his new game. That's going to be at the Joe 6. If you want to see that, you'll have to come to Sheffield in a couple of weeks' time.
So where's it go? Where's it held at this time?
It's Sheffield Hallam University,
Yeah.
which is right in the centre of Sheffield. It's dead easy to get to, even with Sheffield's one-way system. On Sunday, there's loads of on-street parking and reasonably priced car parks around. And it's slap bang next to the railway station. So it's really nicely placed. And it's got the cheapest and best food on the show circuit.
Oh, we like food.
We like talking to the catering team.
Yeah.
They said, "What sort of stuff do we need?" And I said, "Anything that's pig related.
Yes.
Pig related product will sell to wargamers.
Oh God, yes. Yes. Bacon sandwiches, sausages.
Yeah, anything like that. That will do. So, burgers, hot dogs. Yeah, they're going to be catering for the wargamer. None of
Excellent.
this vegetarian business. Well, you can do it with show. Yeah, you can have what you want.
Oh, fantastic! And is the traditional tour of the Baccus um, studio going on the day before?
Yes, that's. We've got the afternoon session completely full. There's places in the morning session if anybody wants to get in contact. That's free, by the way. I know, it's free. Uh, Free, and you get plain chocolate hobnobs.
Oh, nice. What can I say?
Yeah, and and if you're that way inclined, you get a cup of Yorkshire tea.
Oh, what can I say? That sounds absolutely brilliant.
Well, you've got to put it with 2 hours of me.
Well,
That's the downside.
well, I want to thank you for coming on the show, Pete. It's been absolutely fantastic, and I'm glad we've had a chance to talk about the joys of 6 mil, the joys of big gaming in 6 mil as well.
Yeah.
Because I think, as we spoke about with Per and Charles and many others, you can do a fantastic big game in 6 mil, and 10 mil and 15 mil and 28 mil. Just
You can, but you can't go yet, Ken,
can I not?
because you alluded to this and you haven't done it. You mentioned the fact that I was probably the reason why you're doing this show.
Oh yes. Do,
Oh,
do you not
yes.
remember this?
Oh, I remember this. I think it's time for you to admit it.
Yeah, the it was on Sean's podcast,
It was
and you
you
were
on
going
show,
on
yes.
about some bloke who'd done a 28 mil 8-inch howitzer and how it was
Yeah.
just absolutely ridiculous, and you could never use it in a game. That 28 mil howitzer was mine. So there we go. It's
and,
your fault.
and your reaction was?
Well, I'd had a few whiskies at the time when I was listening to it. I'm like, hey, you buggers. Hey, bloody, I'm going to do a bloody podcast now about big games.
So when it comes down to it, you are a creature of my creation.
You are. I am. I am. It's your fault. 44 episodes and it's your fault.
Yeah. I'm not Frankenstein. What does that make you?
a very poor man's Frankenstein. But yeah, no, it was. There was a number of podcasts around the time, and we talked about it earlier on. With those, everyone says, "Oh, it's a big game. You can't do that in 28 mil." And oh, you'll never fit that on a table. And oh, you don't want big units. And it's a drive that's gone on in modern wargaming towards the skirmish, 28 mil skirmish, and that was kind of what I was railing against, and very similar to what Sean was railing against with his 6 mil thing. And whatever your bag in wargaming is, there's loads of people out there who do it, because I was starting to think, am I the only person who does 28 mil big games still? I can't be. Surely I can't be. And then this podcast has proven me right, because there's bloody
Yeah.
thousands of them. And it's a mutual respect for everyone's type of wargaming. But I shout about what I enjoy, and you shout about what you enjoy, and
Yeah.
better the world of wargaming is for it, I think.
I think diversity is the way ahead.
Mm.
But it's got to be tolerance with the diversity, which is what basically I've been
Unless
doing.
unless they're from that place over the hill, and then they can bugger off.
Well, I'm going there, Sean.
Are you? Oh, no.
I've got to show it to St. Helens.
Oh, is it Phalanx coming up? Wear your rubber gloves.
Well,
Take some Yorkshire tea.
Yeah. No, I won't tell you some of the stories there, but let's say my geographical point of origin is well known to the organisers and indeed to the people there.
Excellent. That 60-foot Yorkshire flag you fly over the top of your stand doesn't help, does it?
Yeah. And it's even better winding them all up on August the 1st.
Oh, brilliant.
Which, to those who don't know, is
Yorkshire
Day.
Yorkshire Day, exactly. So to finish off, you do have an opportunity to ask me a question, because I've asked you questions for nearly 3 hours now.
Brilliant. Joy 6 next year.
Yes.
Will you be on our panel?
Of course I will, mate.
There you go. Easy question.
Do I get a big shield? Do I get a big shield to put in front of me? But
no,
things thrown at me.
It's not to protect you. It's to protect us from you.
Is it? Right. Okay.
Yeah, because you're going to radiate big figure vibes,
I'll bring some of my 6 mil stuff along for people to see.
Oh, brilliant! Yeah.
Well, thanks once again, Pete. It's been brilliant having you on the show, mate. And I'll come and have a chat with you at the next show. And it just leaves me to say good night to everyone. If you'd like to say good night, Pete.
Good night, all. Or as you say around here, Sithy.
Sithy.
Well, everyone, I hope you enjoyed that chat with Pete, and very evangelical about the 6 mil scale, and rightly so. It's good to have people who are enthusiastic about different parts, different areas of the hobby, as I have always been enthusiastic and pushing big game 28 mil. Pete has been pushing 6 mil and big game 6 mil as well. And we spoke about Per Broden, we spoke about other people who are doing big games in 6 mil. So it's all out there. It's all fantastic to see. I love that spectacle of a big game on a big table. And as I've said many, many times, scale doesn't really matter for me. It's the spectacle that draws me to the game. So that just leaves me to say that my next guest on episode 45, I'm hoping to be speaking to Mark Hydes. And Mark is a professional painter with his company Conflict in Colour. He has authored a book. And he was also heavily involved in what I think was the greatest wargame show of all time, and that was Triples at the old Octagon site. There were many pluses and minuses for that show, but it really brings back some great memories of my early and middle games days of wargaming in my local area. Sadly, the show's no longer with us, but we want to be all about positivity, so we're going to talk about the glory days of Triple in amongst all the other stuff that me and Mark are going to chat about. So hopefully that'll be out in a few weeks' time. I'm a little bit behind with my schedule, but it's a self-imposed schedule, so it's not for you to worry about. And then after Mark, that's the last of the current batch of guests that I've got booked in. So I will be having a Brews in the Binyard summer special with Sean Clark's and Alex Sutherland, and then I've got my guests lined up for between now and Christmas. I just need to book them all in. And I've also had a positive response from ProArt, the paintbrush people that I keep banging on about. So I'm hoping to have an interview with them as well coming up very soon. So enjoy your wargaming, and I hope you're looking forward to the next episode with Mark. Until then, City.